Okay, it is 7:02. I welcome you this evening. I'm now calling to order the Beverly School Committee, Committee of the Whole. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. We're meeting virtually using a remote meeting application that has been provided to our district at no cost. We have BevCam broadcasting us tonight on channel 99, as well as streaming us on their YouTube government channel and their bevcam.org streaming page. Sorry. I am also recording this meeting to have a backup session in case we encounter any technical difficulties. This is allowed under the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order entitled Order Suspending Certain Provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. This order specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present, and it asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. To be clear, tonight's meeting is a committee of the whole, and there are no agenda items to address the body during the meeting. We would encourage viewers to utilize the BevCam streaming options this evening if possible. Also, we are trying a captioning tool this evening while a longer-term, better solution is created citywide. So please bear with us as we kick the tires on this third-party captioning tool, recognizing that it is just a trial basis this evening. Joining us tonight, just a moment, I'm letting some people in. Joining us this evening is the school committee. We also have various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment for the record. As a preliminary matter, during tonight's meeting, we will be watching for people who want to be recognized by the chair. Using the hand raise button or a hand in front of your video camera seems to be working sufficiently well for us. Please disable your video if bandwidth starts to falter, as it tends to help recover the audio. I would ask that we do not use the chat function unless it relates to a technical issue only, such as the loss of sound. And that I ask that all committee members please endeavor to speak clearly into your microphone so that we may have an adequate record. As always, please do not use texting or social media during our session tonight unless you are truly disconnected and need assistance to reconnect to our meeting. Also, please remember that any audio or video that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. And as such, I encourage you to use your mute functionality to prevent any background noise. The chair will call on you to unmute when you are recognized. And members, I would now like to conduct our roll call to confirm that you are both able to see and hear me, and that we are able to see and hear you this evening. Please come off mute to affirm as I call your name. All other participants, I will do a similar roll call in a moment. Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Great. Kimberly Coelho.
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Ferretti.
Yes.
John Mulady.
Yes.
Thank you. Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm Rachel Abel. We are all present. Joining us this evening is Dr. Sue Chirocek.
Yes.
Ms. Donna Bergeron.
Yes.
Great. Is Dr. Dorothy Flaherty with us?
She's having some technical difficulties. I'm going to try to help her get in.
Okay. Thank you. See if I have anyone in the waiting room. Okay. We have Miss Jean Sherburne.
Hello.
Miss Bethany Splansky,
Yes.
and Mr. John Harmon,
Good evening.
and Miss Christina Leal,
Yep.
Mr. Dana Cruikshank.
Yes, here.
Okay. Mr. Dan Keefe, I'm not sure I saw him. That's all right. I saw Miss Betty Taylor.
Hello.
Okay. Great. I'm just going to pop this window open on my large monitor so I can see who else we have with us. Miss Bergeron. I also see Megan Hart, our principal at Ayers. Mr. Paul Layton from the Salem News. Miss Julia Brotherton, our high school teacher and BTA president. We are also joined by City Councilor Todd Rotondo, Principal Aaron Sweeney, Principal Julie Smith, I believe a parent Joshua Iao, Principal Gabrielle Montevecchi, another member of the public or parent Sarah Aiello, member of the public Debbie Kunha, also another parent Katie Perron, member of the public Rion Casey, Jeffrey Matson, and a member has joined with SB as the initials. If you would be so kind as to use your real name, we would appreciate that. And in our waiting room, I'm admitting Dr. Dorothy Flaherty, Mr. Ryan Redmond, Miss Jessica Dusak, D-U-S-A-K. And I'm going to give one more warning to the people who don't have real names.
Madam President,
Yes.
the person with the initials SB may not know how to, oh, well, there we go. They just changed. Never mind. I was going to say, they might not know how to change their name in the app.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Biznick. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so we still have 3 iPhone people, but we're just going to have to trust that they saw that message. Okay, well, thank you all. That will be our roll call for this evening. I'll watch for other people looking to join. I just want to say that tonight's supporting materials were distributed to members in a few different emails as they were prepared, and anything that's presented this evening will also become available to the public as part of our public record. We make those available on beverlyschools.org in a timely manner. Much of this presentation will be presented on the screen during the meeting as well. As a final reminder, since we are meeting remotely, any and all votes or calls for action this evening will be done via a roll call vote, and the chair will call the roll in alphabetical order, excepting that the chair, who will go last. And like last week, I would ask that we entertain clarifying questions, probing questions, and then comments before we rush to any motions. The chair will specifically be calling stepwise in the order I see hands. And again, with the captioning tool trial tonight, it will be as important as ever to speak clearly into your microphone using your best diction. Please wait to be called on by the chair. However, for efficiency's sake, you may address the superintendent directly in your remarks or questions. We do anticipate entering into a brief executive session and not returning to open session as our final agenda item this evening. And I would say that depending on time, we may need to reserve some items for our planned meeting on August 26th. With that, let me do another check of the waiting room. And I'd like to call on Mr. Milady this evening to lead us in the pledge. Let me just admit Daisy Clancy to the room. And I will share my flag. I really do need to invest in a flag for inside my home. Why don't we ask Mr. Milady to come off mute?
Sure.
And
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United
United
States
the
of
States of
flag
America,
the United States,
and to the
America,
republic for
and
which it
to the
stands,
republic
one
for which it
nation,
stands,
under
one
God,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
with liberty
indivisible,
Liberty.
and justice
with
for
liberty,
all.
For all.
justice for all. Thank you. That wasn't half bad. Okay, our next agenda item is to review and approve our meeting records. We have two sets. We've had two very long meetings that have taken a little extra time to prepare our meeting records, although still pretty fast. I need to share my PDF viewer with you. Our first set of meeting records are a collection from our Thursday, July 30th, 2020 Zoom remote meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the draft meeting record?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Do we have any corrections, edits, or concerns with this copy of the draft meeting record? I'm not seeing any. We do need to take a roll call vote. If we're ready, I will start with Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Thank you. Kim Coelho.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Ferretti
Yes.
and Ms. Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. John Mulady.
Yes.
There you go. Thanks. Mr. Lerna Visnick
Yes.
and Rachel Abel, yes. So those will become available on our website if they're not already. I apologize, I'm losing my screen here. I need to offer first an apology to the group. I had an impression that I'd be able to review meeting records while on vacation with my family, having limited bandwidth and no laptop. And clearly that plan failed. I do want to thank Ms. Visnick, one of the former secretaries of the school committee, for just highlighting some things I had overlooked in my review, so I appreciate that. We were presented the draft meeting records. However, to avoid having any deliberation outside the meeting, as we did last time I presented some track changes, I would like to be able to recommend right off the bat that we accept the typographical and clarifying edits that both Ms. Visnick had provided and I did once I had returned home from my brief vacation. So with that caveat, do we have first a motion, and then we can review the track changes? I will present them all on screen.
Ms. Abel, I had already accepted the changes that Mrs. Ferretti had sent as well. She had previewed the minutes prior.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank
Those
you.
were, yeah, those were accepted, yes. Okay, well, I will make a motion to approve the meeting records of 8/6/2020, and then I will present the edits as an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so I hope this is relatively smooth as we scroll through. I hadn't
Does that
properly
mean Rachel,
introduced.
in case you wondered, Mrs. Ferretti? I didn't know if you knew who made the second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Zoom showed you with a yellow box, so sorry. Thank you, Ms. Ferretti. In our last meeting, I should have properly recognized Josh Doolittle as our HVAC consultant, rather than just a member of the public. We didn't end up calling on him, but he was present with Mr. Mike Collins. I had left a note at home about the other public attendees, so Stephanie LaValle. I don't want to belabor this too long, but I want to be mindful that you are all seeing this for the first time. Clearly, face coverings has the S at the end of the word. Apologies. Some of these are just removing extra spaces before periods. Hyphenating 5-year period. They just used as an adjective. And here, the thought wasn't completed, and so the thought was clarified. And the order of me asking the rounds of questions, we started alphabetically at the reverse of the alphabet, so my clarifying round started above that point. And there again. And there again. And then here, Ms. Visnick has provided just a little bit more clarity about what was discussed, or what the questions were for each member.
Madam President,
Mm-hmm.
would you mind scrolling back? I didn't have time to. I saw a lot of blue edits, and I just
Sure.
wanted to sync them.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just if you could scroll up so I could find my place in the minutes
even
that
more?
I had approved. I just want to be able to find my place in the.
Okay. You tell me where.
Right there. Let me just find the.
I'm noticing as I scroll, my audio seems to falter, so I will try not to talk while I'm scrolling.
Okay, you could roll down. What time in the meeting is this? Do we have a time?
1 hour, 1 minute, 56 seconds.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Could we
you
stop?
have it in and you take it out and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to recommend, we don't need a vote on this,
wait,
I don't think,
just-
as long as everybody agrees, but I'd like to recommend that.
Wait, I'm sorry. Okay, I think someone's in 2 different meetings. Ms. Ferretti, I see your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to scroll down on just to take a look at.
A little bit more.
Yeah, I want to make sure because I spent about 3 hours on them Sunday doing the edits, and I'm sorry, I don't think I copied you and I responded to Donna because it was at like 11:30 at night.
Right. So the version that went out to the body included your edits.
Okay, thank you.
And so, as has been sort of the custom now that we are applying the BevCam hour, minute, and seconds within our minutes, since we all made pretty lengthy remarks, prepared remarks, which I'm sure each of us has available if requested, we've just referred to the BevCam timestamps for that section. It was about an hour with all of us. And that's consistent with our agreement about meeting records reflecting the motions and the actions. I need to let a few people back into the meeting. I apologize for doing double duty here. We'll ask Councilor Rotondo to make sure he remains muted this time around. Thank you. Okay. This next section, I think this is pretty much the end of any clarifying edits.
Could you hold on? I'm sorry. One sec. I just see that some of the edits that I had suggested there have been crossed out. Like the quote, put a motion on the table. That was a direct quote.
So I did review BevCam, and these were the words.
Okay. I was looking at the BevCam as well, but as I said, I rewatched this entire segment about 4 times to make sure I got it right, because I know how important it was.
I noticed we missed Ms. Visnick there. Sorry. So I suggest we add a Ms. Visnick.
I'm sorry. The put a motion on the table, I have a note here. That was the direct quote from that time. Her direct quote at that 3:07:44 segment was that she wished to share and quote unquote put a motion on the table relating to her proposal. Anytime I quoted, I made sure I wrote in my notes here exactly. So I don't know if we can table these edits until we have a chance to go back and confirm with the recording, but I'm fairly certain. As I said, I rewatched and watched when as secretary, as my responsibility to do the edits, I took that on. I know Ms. Visnick is a former secretary, but I'm the current, so I took that role and made sure these edits were correct.
Yeah, so I also, having been a former secretary of the committee, had also, reviewed back the tape, and we need a minute before a motion was definitely the words out of my mouth, and that is the proposal I'd like to put on the table, is what I also heard when I rewatched it, but yeah.
It was actually Ms. Visnick's comments, not yours, that I was referring to.
Okay.
It was above there. It was crossed out. Yeah, no, it was crossed out, the quote, put a motion on the table. And that's precisely what she said at that time.
Okay.
And then that's why you said
one question
after we need a minute. Yeah.
So we don't need to have direct quotes in our minutes if we want to agree that Ms. Visnick had a proposal or a motion that she was thinking about at that point. I mean,
so are you suggesting? I'm sorry. Yeah, you're overlapping, so I don't mean to interrupt. I was just going to ask: are you suggesting you strike your quote as well?
That is what I'm suggesting.
I just feel that given how the meeting went and in light of recent complaints filed, that it was just important to capture the essence of what was said. Because I think because it was such a lengthy meeting, as an investigation unfolds, I wanted to make sure the minutes were as airtight as they could be.
Okay. So do we want to continue to look at the edits and then decide if we're tabling this set of meeting records for another night?
I think I would, given that I made the edits and now I see all my edits are undone or edited, I don't feel comfortable voting on these without a chance to take them and look at the recording again and confirm these. As I said, I spent over 3 hours Sunday per the request to edit them, to compare them to the recording, and all the edits I made are unedited or revised, and so this throws me off, and I need more time.
Okay, so now that we have presented these in an open session, I can distribute the recommended edits and we can take some more time. Therefore, it sounds like If I can look at other members, we are tabling this motion. I just want to continue scrolling through so that we've properly entered these suggested edits into our record. We should aim not to have 5.5-hour meetings, by the way, because these meeting records are quite a project.
Madam President, there's
Joke.
a hand
Yep.
up.
Oh, Ms. Coelho, yes?
Thank you. Madam President, just a quick suggestion. I don't know if it's possible, as I'm not used to the remote meetings either. Is it possible to actually share the meeting, the live meeting that we had, that one clip, so then everyone could rewatch it together to become a unanimous decision on what Ms. Visnick actually said?
We can look into getting a direct transcription made, yes. I don't know that playing video through video actually will work. I'm having trouble just presenting a PDF with the bandwidth that we have. But we'll take that into advisement. We can have a direct transcript.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then another correction, I noted that there were some legacy items that we actually hadn't had at our last meeting. So those were from the prior set of minutes. Okay, so I will distribute that to the group, and we will put that on our agenda for August 26th.
Madam President, before we leave this topic, I'd like to try to have a little bit of a conversation about the direct quotes, given that we have a policy and given that this body has already talked, and very early in this year in one of our meetings, I specifically brought to the table the fact that I had made some comments in a meeting, and my comments were not accurately reflected in the meeting minutes. And the response that was given by the secretary at that time was that we were aiming for quote unquote professionalism in our meeting minutes, and that although we can say things to each other at the table, given that we have BevCam, we don't need our meeting minutes to be verbatim quotes. And so I'd like to go on record right here, right now, in this meeting, as saying that I am, given that precedent, and given that we have very few, if any, quotes in any other set of meetings, I take offense to the fact that I am quoted and very few other people are quoted in these meeting minutes, especially given that those exact same quotes are used in the complaint that is filed against me. So, like you, I do not believe, I'm not even going to say believe, I did not say what I'm quoted as saying in the original set of these meeting minutes. So not only do we not usually have quotes, but now the quote that is in here is incorrect. And I take great offense to that. And like I said, there are several other quotes, and each of the other quotes is also not coincidentally named in the open meeting complaint.
Okay. So we are tabling this version
Madam
of meeting
President,
records.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to respond.
I didn't see a hand.
Yeah, that's okay. I had my hand up. I just, I was the one that did the edits. I just first want to address, it's possible that the quotes are the same as the complaint that listed your name in it because they took them from the recording, possibly, because that's where I took the quotes from the recording. I think that in this particular set of minutes, it was such a lengthy meeting, and in light of the open meeting law complaint that has come forward, I think that I had a heightened awareness that I wanted to make sure our minutes were complete and did not misrepresent the flow of what the conversation was. Again, I took my quotes. I watched that recording several times, and we can all do it again, but I took it directly from the meeting. So I'm guessing if my quotes, I haven't looked at the complaint since we all received it, but if the quotes match up with what's in the complaint, then they got them from the recording, which makes sense. Because when someone files a complaint, they usually reacquaint themselves with the facts before they file the complaint. I don't know, I think that this is a unique situation. It's not just a regular meeting. We were nearly 6 hours long. And again, there's a legal matter on the table that is, I find, I want to dot all the I's and cross the T's. So we have indeed in past minutes used quote, although sparingly, I'll admit, because we did try to move away from that, because in past years, I think we have excessively used them. But I think in this instance, I did not excessively use quotes, but I did use ones I felt were important to the flow of that meeting, statements that were reflected and possibly propelled that open meeting law violation.
Thank you, Ms. Ferretti. I think we have the point. Okay, so we are tabling the meeting records of August 6th until our next scheduled meeting, which is August 26th. Our next agenda item, number 4, are some school committee chair updates. I apologize, I'm dropping my video since my audio seems to be faltering. The meeting dates that I want each of us to recognize: we have a negotiating subcommittee meeting with our Beverly teachers tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. The BTA will be joining us at 4:30.
Madam President?
Continue.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe you probably want to share the agenda. You're still sharing the meeting minutes.
I'm still sharing. Thank you. Just as I get good at this, we are going to be back in person. So we are going to the agenda. Is that sharing now?
No.
Doesn't look like it's shared. Share screen. Share agenda. Double clicking helps. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Visnick. I didn't write the dates on the agenda, but I have them in front of me. So tomorrow, our negotiating subcommittee meets at 3:30 and 4:30 to discuss our bargaining for reopening with our Beverly Teachers Association Unit A. We also have our scheduled committee of the whole meeting for 7 p.m. next Wednesday, August 26th. We may potentially try Google Meet. As I mentioned at the start of this meeting, we are trying to use some third-party plugin for captioning our meeting, but we would like to compare that with the Google Meet transcription services. But between now and posting, I just wanted to make that clear that we may change our venue unless we find that tonight is successful with this set of tools. Then you each should have received an invitation from Ms. Bergeron and then also from the orientation leader for our new hire orientation. That will be Thursday, August 27th at 8:30 a.m. We'll be physically/socially distancing with our new hires at the Beverly High School. So please do make sure you've marked your calendar accordingly. For our next item this evening, you'll see an alphabet soup on our agenda, and I want to thank Ms. Ferretti for working with me to bring directly to the Committee of the Whole a discussion about policies. Broadly, we have a responsibility to reflect on our policies during this unprecedented time. We may indeed have conflicts within our policy regarding our reopening plan. MASC has provided us with a number of pieces of guidance. Just letting a couple people into the room. So MASC has provided us with a number of pieces of guidance. I am not sure if everyone has been able to absorb every ounce of that, but for today's meeting and in our meeting packet, what I did try to do was to collect the essence of those communications from our MASC partners in preparing this section of our meeting agenda. So there's really 3 buckets of policy work before us this evening, and I want to clarify first and foremost that it may not be that we are revising any of our policies, but we could perhaps follow in the footsteps of some other districts in our area that have made motions to basically say collectively that the superintendent would have authority to modify or suspend policies or to develop protocols in lieu of actually physically going through the process of editing, much in the way that we suspended our policy for warrant signing. We would be looking to put a caveat around the term of these suspensions or reassigning of authority. And so the document that was presented in the packet just gives us some suggestions or guidelines. I'm scrolling down now to our existing policy on policy adoption, and I wanted to call out a reminder to the school committee that we had a policy to do multiple readings when we change policy, but that we have a sentence in this policy that says we may dispense with the above sequence to meet emergency conditions, and we are still technically under the governor's emergency orders. So I would say that this policy exception applies tonight more than ever, and hopefully this is the only time. So rather than bring these to the subcommittee, we're bringing some concepts to the table tonight. They're really in the 3 buckets as I described. There are a couple of samples from MASC that we could consider adopting or at least considering, and in light of the suggestions from what other region or other districts are doing, we can discuss that. And then there are some that just generally needed to be reviewed. I am sure you all had a thrilling weekend with this list, looking through our policy guide. Again, the intention tonight perhaps is to do a blanket statement of some sort. And then there is one other for clear revision, the ACAB regarding what we have right now is sexual harassment, but this is harassment generally. And when we get to that particular policy, I have some additional information to share. So with that information, I think one of the most important topics that we need to discuss this evening, and that is front of mind in our community, as evidenced by the emails we are receiving, is the topic of face coverings. Some people call it masking, but really we need to be all-encompassing in our discussion about face coverings. MASC provided a draft policy, and I do believe I provided that in the packet. I'm just scrolling down here. I had the opportunity to look at what some of our surrounding districts had done. I also had a brief conversation with our legal counsel, and she did generally, not specifically, advise us to use caution when adopting policies from MASC samples, where in this particular case, masks or face coverings might not be an enduring policy that we wish to have in our record. So I first want to put forward an idea of perhaps using the option to give authority to our superintendent to create a protocol or a procedure regarding face coverings, and that what we might do tonight is to give some parameters based on our assumptions, based on the recommendations we heard when we adopted our reopening plan. So with that, I'd like to see if we might have a motion so we can begin some detailed discussion about face coverings.
Madam President, I'll make a motion that we discuss EBCFA.
As a
well, as either a policy or as how would you like to word the motions? Discuss
it's
the
so,
alternative and the trade-offs between them, right? So we have to have a motion on the table
This
to
is
be able
the-
to have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is the crux. We need to have information to be able to have a discussion. So, yeah, we need to have information to make a motion, and we can't really do this. So, maybe since I'm a little bit more in the know about what this policy was and what some other districts are doing. For instance, I looked at Danvers and I looked at Norwood and those types of things. Maybe I could suggest a motion?
Sure.
I don't want to monopolize the meeting, so please do stop me. But I was thinking that we could entertain a motion to direct the superintendent to create protocols related to the wearing of face coverings on school grounds.
So moved.
And buses. I should add, buses are a continuation of school grounds. Ms. Bergeron, do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And it sounded like actually Ms. Visnick is moving those words. Okay. And
Second,
I'm
okay.
looking for a second.
Second.
And I see Ms. Coelho was giving that a second. Okay. So we have a motion now to direct Dr. Chirocek to develop protocols related to face coverings on school property, including buses. Okay. Is there someone that wishes to speak first? Looking for hands? Ms. Visnick, sorry, you were behind this, okay?
That's okay. I guess I would like to have either you or Dr. Trocek speak to the advantages or the disadvantages, pros and cons, however you wish to phrase it, of having a procedure versus a policy. And, you know, if there's a given advantage for a policy, then what would we be setting aside by going to a procedure instead? And if there's an advantage of a procedure, what is it that is compelling you to put forward that as the motion and would compel us to vote that direction versus a policy?
My simple answer would be that we have hired a district leader, and her ability and knowledge, on the ground is much closer to it. We are sort of hamstrung by the fact that we need to post a meeting and need to have 48 hours of notice, and we all need to have these long meetings. And I just feel like this in particular, if we provide parameters of our expectations, our chosen leader would be able to execute on that much better than us as a body.
And I think I also heard Ms. Abel say part of it is the duration. So face coverings is not something that we hope is going to be a permanent scenario in our school. So a procedure would cover it as long as you needed it to cover. I guess I'm hoping to hear tonight the parameters around which, things that you want. I know that there are a lot of people that are waiting to hear who is going to be required to wear face coverings in our schools and how you're going to word that. And I'll take my direction and lead from that. So I guess that's what I'm happy there's a discussion and conversation. I know there's a lot of people that are curious to hear where the conversation goes.
Mr. Milady?
Thank you. So I have a question. If some folks at home feel uncomfortable about the policy or procedure we decided to do regarding masks, and they decide to change their minds about what their family's plans are for the fall, will we be able to accommodate that? In other words, like offer possibly another window, because this could be not the deciding factor, but another factor that parents need to take into consideration moving forward.
I mean, we can certainly consider that, and we're just iterating plans as we go along. So, every day we have a little new iteration that we have to consider. So I guess I would wait and see. I believe that the direction that has been given is that we would be wearing masks. I think that the plan proposed that masks would be K to 12 in our conversation a week ago. So I'm not really sure if there's a different thinking of the body or not, but we certainly would be able to work with whatever decision is made. So.
Okay, I saw Ms. Ferretti's hand and then Ms. Visnick's.
Thank you. I just want to first say that I'm supportive of having Dr. Trocheck make these small decisions, or big decisions, as we move forward. She's the expert and she's the person we hired to make these roles. And then second, I want to kind of just add on and support what Mr. Milady just said. I 100% agree with him that as we do tweak and make these changes, I think it is confusing families and making them kind of change direction. This one change, and I know we changed a little about the remote learning, and we'll talk about that later. But so yes, I would 100% agree with what Mr. Milady said as well, and giving parents the flexibility as we make these tweaks down the road.
Am I hearing an indication that we might want to amend our motion on the table to add some specific parameters?
What,
Mayor Cahill? Oh, well, I see Mayor Cahill's hand. Ms. Visnick, I apologize.
I wanted to pass to him. I saw his hand up, and I'm happy to defer.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, everybody. Two questions. Let me go with I think the easier one first. At the bottom of what we can see, paragraph starting exceptions to this policy, I'm not clear as to why that language is there, given that the language above, starting with individuals may be excused, seems to suggest that
so this is a sample policy. Yeah, this was the sample policy from MASC. My opening motion is to rather suggest that Dr. Trocheck develop the protocol and that we provide parameters. So this is just what MASC published out to its membership. Some districts are using it, and others are deciding to go a different direction.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's confusing language. It seems to be kind of contradicting itself in some places. So that's fine. Let me go to the real question I have. We were able to run our summer learning program this summer. We had about 60 kids in school for 5 weeks. We had 6 to 8 kids in a classroom with a teacher and a para. And one thing that I noticed, having been in the building in the classrooms a bunch, and then talking with the teachers and paras about it all, is that by and large the kids had no issue with wearing the face coverings. And these were rising first graders, rising second graders, rising third graders. Given that there are accommodations for those who are happy wearing face covering, my question is, and I'm thinking I'd prefer that we make the default that all the kids are wearing face coverings, K, and that that the exceptions as listed out, however Dr. Trocheck comes back to those exceptions in class, apply to the kindergarten and first graders as well.
I would second that friendly motion.
Amendment.
Thank you. I stopped myself at making the same mistake I made last week.
So the audio did cut out, and I just wanted to clarify. Mayor Cahill, did you say pre-K or K?
Well, we have K through 4 in one, in the same building. Pre-K runs separately. I guess I'd ask Dr. Trocheck that question.
So it would have been my recommendation that K through 4 recommended in pre-K. Oh, is everybody breaking up or?
Yeah.
Try again.
Okay. In speaking with Bethany Splansky, I think we were hoping it would be recommended in pre-K and we would do everything that we could to wear them, but our very vulnerable pre-K population might struggle, and maybe they would be the exceptions, and that's okay if our exception policy kind of fell into some of that. But we were pretty strong K through 12, everyone would be wearing a mask. That would be my recommendation.
Okay,
And
so we
again,
have a
medical
friendly
exceptions or
amendment.
whatever.
A friendly amendment for K to 4 with Mayor Cahill and Linda Bisnick. Do we want to take a quick roll call vote on that aspect or that parameter?
Well, I'm sorry, Madam President. The friendly amendment is K through 12.
Oh, K through 12. Apologies. Thank you. Okay. So K through 12. Any more discussion on that parameter? We'll have other parameters, I'm sure. By roll call vote, Mayor Cahill?
Sorry.
Well, I don't know how we want to handle friendly amendments. It is hard with a roll call vote. Do we want to talk about some other parameters? I mean, we can suspend the Roberts rules and try to make this a workable.
I just wonder if we can't add the pre-K and say strongly recommended for pre-K and quote unquote mandated. Are we using that strong of a word? Mandated for K to 12.
Required.
Required. Oh, thank you. That sounds nicer.
Rather than treat those as two separate friendly amendments.
Yes, ma'am. One.
Are we okay?
One amendment.
Okay.
But I guess that Mayor Cahill, that goes to you because it's really your amendment.
Yeah, no, that sounds consistent.
Okay, Ms. Robinson, I saw your hand. What are you thinking?
I'd just like to say I would like it to include pre-K as well, and I was just wondering if Mrs. Splansky would like to say anything to that about pre-K.
Sure. I think that for the majority of pre-K students, they will be able to wear masks, especially students who are, our typical peers or students with a lower level of need. We do have some students with higher level of need who have sensory issues and may struggle a bit with wearing masks. But I think the majority of the preschool students will be able to wear masks with provided mask breaks.
Thank you.
And Ms. Visnick, I see your hand.
I just want to make sure that as we say required, that for those older, not much older, K is not much older than pre-K, but for all of the K through 12s, there will be an exception clause, a similar exception clause to what Ms. Spalansky just said.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the intent.
Fantastic, thank you.
So are we rolling that into the friendly amendment as well? I think that's what I heard, the recommendation from Dr. Churchek and then reiterated by Ms. Spalansky. Okay. So we have a friendly amendment on the table requiring our K to 12 students to wear masks / face coverings, and a recommendation in our pre-K, a strong recommendation in our pre-K with exceptions as outlined by Dr. Churchek and Ms. Splansky for particular students that have particular needs not to wear them. Okay. So let's settle on this parameter because I think there's a lot of other aspects to masks and face coverings that we might want to add that are maybe of a little different parameter. Mayor Cahill, this is just a vote on the friendly amendment, adding some parameters to the primary motion.
Right, yes.
Okay, Kimberly Coelho? Thank you. Kelly Ferretti,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
John Milady,
Yes.
Linda Visnick,
Yes.
and Rachel Abel, yes. So we have added those friendly amendments. Is there someone that wants to offer another parameter to our primary motion? Ms. Visnick?
I'd like to offer a parameter around the type of mask that will be acceptable, or perhaps it's easier to say the type of masks that will be unacceptable. In particular, I believe the quote-unquote gator style mask is incredibly thin and as such is not acceptable. I don't know how much more detailed we would want to be. I mean, that's the only one that I can name with a name that I believe is
Right.
unacceptable.
So there have definitely been different publications that are describing what an acceptable or effective mask might be. Do we want to give a parameter to Dr. Chirocek to use reasonable guidance, or do we want to be more specific about material types or layers, or I just want us to recognize that I'm sure that Dr. Chirocek has lots of information in front of her that she can sift through, but we also each independently have probably seen a lot of the published reports and seen a lot of policies that are getting provided. I saw one from Hawaiian Airlines yesterday that just said, mesh and lace are not acceptable masks. And you would think that would go without saying, but having been on a little mini vacation, I was incredulous with what some people considered to be an appropriate mask. So if you'd like to name a few types, or if you'd like to say specifically that this amendment charges Dr. Chirocek with the task of looking at the appropriate types.
I am happy to let Dr. Chirocek own that.
Oh boy.
Again, with some general, the obvious things that you just named, there's things that we know are not safe, and then I would hope that we would have some flexibility too, in the sense that I had a conversation with someone the other day about the fact that their child is now very comfortable wearing a gaiter, and they want to modify their gaiter, and we talked about how to do that with how to use the sewing machine and add another layer of cotton on the outside, because the child is now used to having the gaiter material up against their skin and they feel comfortable that way. And so how to upgrade a gaiter to have the additional layers to make it safe. And I would hate to have somebody look at it and say, oh, you're wearing a gaiter, that's not acceptable, right? So there's a lot of wiggle room there.
Ms. Coelho?
Referring to the gaiters, I'd just like to put out there that a lot of the elementary schools have ordered or made a website so that students can order gaiters for their elementary school children.
That might be a point of education for parents. I don't know how many people saw the Duke study that was conducted, and it was unfortunate that some material types used for some gaiters apparently actually consolidates the aerosols into droplets that transmit even more effectively than no mask. Okay. Ms. Robinson, I'm sorry, I saw your hand. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. I would just like to say that I think it would be very difficult for an educator to try to figure out if the mask is indeed, I don't know what the word is, good enough or appropriate for, or safe enough. I just don't think that I don't think that that's something that our educators need to be worried about this year, especially. I mean, they're not going to be that close to the child to be able to see what it is. I don't think they're trained in that. And I just think that's an awful lot to ask of our educators, as much as I think it's great that kids are making them. You know, we all have different masks that we wear. I guess that's getting a little bit deep, but I didn't mean it to be that way. But the masks that we wear, we can wear them out of school, in school, wherever we go. But in school, I think we need to be very specific about what our expectations are, just for consistency and safety.
Mm-hmm. Are you suggesting, I'm not sure we actually had a formal friendly amendment yet for the type of mask, but are you suggesting we provide Dr. Turocek with more guidance about the types and materials? Or are you still supporting an idea of having Dr. Turocek use the best available information to put that into the protocol?
I'm not really sure. I apologize for not understanding what you mean by that.
Yeah. Well, so we're sort of, I see Mayor Cahill, so maybe he'll rescue us with his abilities. Okay, Mayor Cahill, we'll go to you.
I don't know about a rescue. You know, I know that Dr. Trochik and her team will be doing the kind of things that we would all be doing if we were sitting there, right? I mean, DPH at the state level, DESE, everybody's got to be talking about this, because these studies just started landing in the last week, right? Saying different types of masks aren't getting it done, or face covering. So I think Dr. Trochik is probably best suited to chase down the information as best we can get it from the local level up through the state and beyond, and come back with recommendations. That seems to make sense to me.
Okay. And we do have a planned meeting on the 26th, so there's definitely opportunity. Mr. Milady, I just saw your hand.
Thank you. I think Karin's channeling Paul Lawrence Dunbar. We wear the mask, being the English teacher, so I appreciate that. And I'm just going to second what the mayor said, and you know, we'll defer to central administration and their team, and I think it's we'll be saying this ad nauseum until things are better. But being flexible. What was the phrase used, Rachel? Is like rigid flexibility.
Rigid flexibility is the name of 2020. Yes.
So, based on the best science available, and if the science says that this type of mask that we used to think was best, get the information out there. But, I think micromanaging, a no-fly list won't be productive tonight, and let's have the team, put something together. So I guess if you're looking for a friendly amendment, it would be, defer to our school administrative team and science. Also the theme of 2020, listen to science.
Okay, so defer to our school administrative team to outline the types of acceptable, unacceptable masks. Okay. And I'll second that friendly amendment now that it's been more formalized, if that's all right, unless Ms. Visnick, you want the honor.
I'm good.
No? Okay. Okay, so John Milady with a Rachel Abel second. We are deferring to our school administrators to define the types of masks that are acceptable, unacceptable, based on latest information. I think we should just do a roll call on that. I think there's some other parameters that we might want to entertain. Ready, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Karen Robinson?
Yes.
John Milady?
Yes.
Lauren Devisnik?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. So we've added that parameter as a friendly amendment to our primary motion. And are there other members that have another parameter that we'd like to see Dr. Turocek include in a protocol? I'll throw one out there that perhaps we define something about mask breaks, where they happen, when they happen. I'm not going to specify, but
That
I would like,
yeah, I'll include all of that in the protocol.
you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to do that for staff and for everybody anyway, so.
Mm-hmm. I had one other area, having reviewed some of what the other districts are doing, we might want the protocol to add some specificity about how teachers can coach our students to make sure that they're properly keeping their masks in place.
Mm-hmm.
Madam President?
Yes. Ms. Visnick.
Can we please entertain some language around the inability to enter the building or to enter a transportation vehicle? Like if you're getting on the bus, if you don't have a mask, I don't think you should be allowed to enter.
You won't be allowed to enter.
I think we used the word required in our first amendment, our first protocol.
Right, but we have had previous conversations around possibly having a supply at the school, and so then are we going to have a supply on the buses too, so that if a child needs to get on a bus and they don't have one, is the bus driver going to have one to be able to hand out? If a child walks up to the school and they don't have one, even though we said it's required, is the school going to have one to hand out? Right? Like, I just think we need to.
Yep. I'll include all of that.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Turchek. I saw Ms. Ferretti's hand.
I was going to ask the same thing, if we could just possibly have a supply on the bus to avoid any issue. Seems like a simple fix.
Okay. I think we just started making a collection of parameters to have a district supply to outline how mask breaks will be taken and how teachers will coach the wearing of masks as necessary. Do we want to bundle those up? I can make a motion that we friendly amend our primary motion with those items.
I would second such an amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. So we have a friendly amendment motion to add the district supply concept, the mask break concept, and the coaching concept. No further discussion. I'll call the roll real quickly. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Karen Robinson?
Yes.
John Mulady?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. Okay, so we have added that. Are there parameters we're forgetting? Or are we prepared to vote on our primary motion to direct Dr. Turchek to develop the protocols?
Ready to vote?
Ready to vote. Okay, so our primary motion has a number of friendly amendments. The motion is to direct Dr. Turchek to develop our district protocols with regards to masks and face coverings, more generally face coverings. We would require them K to 12, as suggested by Mayor Cahill and Lorinda Visnick and approved by the body. We would recommend in pre-K, strongly recommend in pre-K, with exceptions as reasonable, as outlined. And the body had approved that friendly amendment. We also have given guidance that a parameter should include the types of masks that are acceptable, unacceptable, and that the district would have a supply on hand, that mask breaks and coaching would be provided. Ready to vote? Mayor Cahill?
Madam President, thank you for that good work, and yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Ferretti?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Karen Robinson?
Yes.
John Mulady?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. Yes, the motion has passed. And Dr. Turchek, we look forward to seeing what you put together for us.
Alrighty.
There was a second MASC sample policy, and just in my initial investigation, I don't see it's very popular. There are definitely some districts that are choosing to adopt a policy about remote learning, but I do believe that we've given a good reflection on our remote learning plan in our reopening document, and that we'll continue to be using that document. So my motion, or my suggested motion, might be that we leave this on the table for now, unless there's someone who has other opinions or done more research. Is there an interest to adopt such a policy? We don't currently have one. Not many districts do, is my
I have no such
short
interest.
answer. So, okay, so we will leave that one on the table. Thank you, MASC, for giving us something to think about. Okay, so with the alphabet soup list of policies, you can imagine that with the change of our delivery during this pandemic, there are a number of policies that have just slightly different expectations based on our reopening plan. If you had an opportunity to open some of the documents, you would see, some things just don't apply if we're in a remote model or in a hybrid model on a remote day, etc. So there is a supplemental policy that MASC had suggested districts adopt. Again, the reviews are mixed in my survey of what districts are doing with this supplemental. I provided it to you, and I highlighted specifically some of the language that I put at the beginning of the document in the packet, where we could, instead of adopting a policy, perhaps entertain a motion with some of the concepts of allowing, during the reopening or during the emergency declaration, of the superintendent to have the ability to modify or suspend as she sees fit any elements of the policy that are inapplicable or not practical. So I recognize I got in the weeds with this, as Ms. Ferretti also recognized you could get quite in the weeds with all of this policy work. My recommendation to the body is to not adopt this. I did highlight a couple instances where we don't even have some of the policies that they have called out. Ms. Visnick, thank you.
I wonder if the list that is in the agenda, is that you and Ms. Ferretti's kind of first pass at the breadth of the policies that you might expect Dr. Trocek would have to, or would potentially want or need to suspend? Or do you have a sense of that? Is that like the containment of it, or is it possible that it's way more?
I think we relied on MASC's guidance, and then what we did was cross-check it against which policies actually existed within Beverly's policy currently. So as I had noted, a couple of the policies that they recommended weren't in our policy, but this list that we put on our agenda is the list of Beverly policies that have an element that, would be considered something that we need to give the superintendent the authority to sort of skip over. So emergency plans was one area. Buildings and grounds management, there's certainly a few items within that will be developing cleaning protocols, for instance, that supersede what we say about, pest management or something more generic, right? And security, transportation, obviously, we've received a lot of DESI guidance that's a little inconsistent. I think specifically We may have had in our policy options to transport for a fee people that aren't mandated riders, but we may or we are unable really physically to be able to transport additional students, or you know, the way that our vote went last week, obviously we went through 6th grade, and it's above 6th grade where the ridership is not mandated. There's the school calendar. I think we addressed that actually last week. I don't think there's anything in particular about the policy that needs to be changed other than the number of student learning days. We were prescriptive in our policy about the 180 days and things along those lines, which obviously are superseded by DESE. Promotion and retention, graduation requirements. There's elements of our internship program, for instance. Ms. Bisnick?
So, for instance, at the end of last year, when it was decided that the 4th quarter would be pass or fail, and then you could determine whether you wanted a grade or whether you want to do pass or fail, and then how your final grade was going to look based on what you did for your 4th quarter, right? All of that kind of creative, I'll call it creative, bookkeeping happened, and I don't believe that came to us. Who knows, right? Because we're on Blur's Day. But I wonder if you know, we've already been operating in that. I guess I'm trying to hold that example up as the fact that we've already been operating in that mode. And I wonder if we couldn't have, in essence, the mayor uses this term quite frequently, the professional courtesy to say, if we think there's going to be a big one, and right off the bat, I'll call out co and extracurriculars, given the news that hit today, right? If there's going to be a big one like that, I would hope that Dr. Trocek would bring it to us, even if it meant that we have to have an emergency meeting. And although we can operate under this mutual trust situation, that okay, I will suspend these policies and grant you the ability to do what you need to do because we are incredibly hamstrung already, I still would like to think that if a huge change were going to happen, that we could have a conversation about it versus just taking my hands off and saying I in essence am getting paid to be on the school committee, and I have said no, I'm not going to do anything relative to policies, right?
Right. So in looking at what other districts are doing, the two quotes or the two phrases that struck me as important were subject to current laws and regulations and collective bargaining, and subject to the provisions of the district's adopted reopening plans. I obviously tend to agree that we shouldn't dive into each individual policy, but rather afford our superintendent her professional judgment as well.
So I guess
this list is the extent.
I would like to make a motion that for the policies in this list, we grant Dr. Trocek, sorry, Dr. we grant our superintendent the right. We suspend our policy and give her the right to take over, with an expectation that there would be professional courtesy.
Can I second that motion with a suggestion that we adopt a few of these clauses as well as part of your motion?
Absolutely, Ms. Maybell.
So subject to current law, regulations, and collective bargaining, and consistent with the district's adopted reopening plan. Ms. Bergeron, do you need me to read that motion back? I took down Ms. Bisnick's and I
you could either read it back,
please.
or
Okay.
I could get it from you tomorrow. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Cahill.
Yeah, I understand the intent behind Mrs. Visnick's motion. I'm guessing, Mrs. Visnick, you don't have any pride of ownership for the words you just used because you kind of come up with them as you went. So I just want to make sure that what we're doing, I'm trying to come up with them as I'm going. What you had said was, maybe you can read it, Madam President. I just want to make sure that the wording reflects what we all really want to say.
Sure. So I am adding, subject to current law and regulation and collective bargaining, the superintendent, for the policies in the list outlined in our agenda, we, the school committee, grant the superintendent, and I need the word, was it flexibility or permission or the right? I think you said the right. The permission.
Do you want to use the wording that's here? Authority to modify or suspend policies or provisions within?
That would have been my preference. Is that all right, Ms. Visnick?
Yes, yes, sir,
Okay.
and yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this first one, where the X is, we'll insert the list of policies outlined in our agenda of August 19th. And we'll use this, Ms. Bergeron, consistent with the district's adopted reopening plan. Is that clear for the members? Do I need to repeat?
Rachel,
I see a couple thumbs.
I got kicked out, so I missed, I think, a lot.
Sure. Okay, so I apologize. We are on the packet item that has the policy for discussion 19 August 20. Ms. Visnick had put forth a motion and we've sort of wordsmithed it back to the suggested motion here, inserting in the spot where the X is located the entire list of policies outlined in our agenda of tonight's meeting. So, subject to current laws and regulation and collective bargaining, the superintendent shall have the school committee's authority to modify or suspend policies or provisions within policies related to this list, consistent with the district's adopted reopening plan. Is that sufficiently clear now? I see more thumbs up. Okay.
That sounds better.
Any further I figured it might help to sort of outline what other districts do here. Okay, so why don't we call the roll on this matter? And Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho?
Please give one
Yes.
to me.
Okay. Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Karen Robinson?
Yes.
John Malady?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. Okay, by a vote of 7-0, the motion is passed. Don't let all of that, what's the word here? Authority? Go too far. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And as I indicated, we have another item for revision. The Title IX guidance has changed as of August 14th. But I would just like to let the body know that I did receive guidance and as well as some bulletins from our attorney that we should take extreme caution in adopting this. Let me bring it up on the screen. This is our current policy that's in effect. And when I compared it to the new document, you will see there are very few remnants of our existing policy. And this policy would also reverberate through our handbooks, for our athletes, for a whole number of things, as well as our training. So it's more complicated than simply adopting the policy. I reached out to Dr. Flaherty and John Harmon on the committee's behalf to ask for recommendation. And in doing so, I learned that there is a leadership retreat scheduled for August 25th and 26th, where counsel or training will be provided to the administrators to better put them in a position to make a recommendation to us. So with the committee's agreement, I'd like to table this until at least our August 26th meeting, recognizing that may not even be enough time for our administrators to make recommendations to us on these changes. So, you know, we're sort of caught. They are technically effective as of the 14th of August, but I don't feel that we, in this format, without more knowledge, would be able to effectively address this policy change. I don't know if I need to take a vote on tables. Yes, Ms. Visnick.
I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to where or why, maybe the how these changes are coming to us.
My understanding is extremely simplified that the administration at the federal level has reclassified a number of areas within the policy. As I scroll, you can see just how extensively things have been changed. And I believe some of it has to do with reporting requirements being different now. I won't say her name, but there is definitely someone in the top levels of our government administration team that had some changes that wanted to come through. And we'll just leave it at that.
And if we do not adopt these changes, do we expect that there is a repercussion?
We are endeavoring to work on the adoption of these policies, but I believe at this meeting tonight, we are not prepared to adopt these and the associated, I say reverberations or needed changes to all of the subsequent documents in our district. So I would like to table this until we have a better recommendation from our administration.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So we will table this until at least our August 26th, if not later, agenda. Ms. Blair, Dr. Flaherty, did you want to add anything or?
No, I just wanted to answer any questions people had, but we share some of the same concerns. That's why you can see how complicated some of the changes are, and they're not the best interest of the victim, shall we say. And so that's why we put the training on so that we can get some of our questions answered as well. The number one being, what if we don't adopt the policy? Is that effective? I'm not sure we're going to be able to not adopt it. But if you have any other specific questions you'd like us to bring to council during the training, just send them to me and I'll make sure we get them.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Yeah, so any questions we can direct your way so that you can make sure they're addressed during the training. Mayor Cahill, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say out loud, this is one where we should not underutilize our legal counsel. You know, we need to make sure that we get sound legal counsel on this. There's all kinds of references to the various standards of proof criminally. And so, yeah, I just want to say that aloud.
Our attorney, Kat Lyons, is actually the one who's presenting to us at our leadership retreat. So we have attorney at the leadership retreat taking care of that. Thanks.
Thanks.
And just from my own research, I would add that there were lots of attempts to block this from actually taking effect, and they, to date, have not yet been successful. So more to come. So we have officially accepted a motion to table this particular policy for the evening with an intention to pick it up again at our 8/26 meeting, if not later. Let's just formally take a roll call to confirm that we are tabling this for now. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Thank you. Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
John Milady,
Yes.
Lorinda Bisnick,
Yes.
and Rachel Abel, yes. We will revisit that on another night. Okay.
Madam President, if may,
Yes.
two things. One is that someone's asking about the numbers of the policies, and so maybe we want to just address that because we do have a lot of people watching right now. And number two is I should have said this an hour and a half ago when we started, but I wish to recognize and thank the mayor for moving this evening's community conversation. Appreciate the fact that because he moved it, we'll all be able to attend, and appreciate the fact that because he moved it, he's able to be with us this entire evening.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cahill. We're sorry about the conflict and appreciate the accommodations.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I think we're getting good work done tonight, and we'll have a better conversation next Tuesday than we would have had otherwise. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Bisnick, I wasn't following your question about the number of policies. Are you
No,
asking
like the
for
letters.
a count?
No, the letters.
Oh, the letters.
So in the chat channel, someone's asking what the, like A, B, A, C, that was dyslexic. They asked what A, C, A, B stands for. Right? So just the general gist of how the policy manual is organized. Section A, so it's like a dual
right.
decimal
So we
system.
adopted yes, we adopted a national standard when we revised all of our policies so that they align with other districts both in our state and in the nation. So each of these codes doesn't really have anything. It's not like an acronym, but it's actually a national naming standard so that the policies can nest and fit within each other. So for instance, we have the most core policies have a 2-letter code. And then as there are sort of branches off of those policies, they start to add extra letters. And then sometimes they are sort of combined concepts, or they do get hyphens when there are examples or forms or additional information. So thank you. I do have to just remind members of the public that we're not using the chat functionality. It does become part of the public record, and this is actually a committee of the whole meeting where we are not entertaining questions from the public at the table. Okay, I need to find my agenda. Our next item is item C, and this is an open meeting law complaint. Let me just get rid of our policies first. I may have closed too many items, bear with me. That's not what I intended to pull up. Let's see, stop share will give me my desktop back. And I will now share. This, okay. Let me make this larger here, this direction, and shrink it this way. Okay, so this evening on our agenda we have item C. This is an OML complaint by C. Castro on August 10th, 2020 relative to the Committee of the Whole meeting of August 6th, 2020. This item will require the committee's action this evening. However, before I call for a motion, I wanted to read a few words about open meeting law, OML. The open meeting law requires that any communication between or among the quorum of a public body on any matter within its jurisdiction must be conducted during a noticed meeting. And that refers to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 and 20. A quorum is defined as a simple majority of the members of the public body, unless otherwise provided in a general or special law, executive order, or other authorizing provision, and that's Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18. The law defines a meeting as a deliberation by the public body with respect to any matter within the body's jurisdiction. Thus, when less than a quorum meets, and it's not a subcommittee of the public body, it is not considered a meeting under the law. The open meeting law applies to both our business meetings as well as our subcommittee meetings, meeting minutes, as well as any other documents, emails, and correspondence that we send and receive, including text messages, in our capacity as an elected public official, become public documents and are subject to the Public Records Law of the Commonwealth. The open meeting law restricts how and where elected officials can deliberate. With certain exceptions, expressions of opinion on a matter within our jurisdiction must be open to the public. The legal definition of deliberation is an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail and social media, between or among a quorum of a public body. For example, if a member of a public body sends an email to a quorum of that public body expressing an opinion on a matter that could come before the body, this communication would violate the law, even if no recipients respond. Many have argued that the open meeting law restrictions on where and when we are able to opine on issues pertinent to our work impedes our ability to fully develop and explore our ideas and concerns. This remains a conundrum for public bodies generally. A majority of members of this term of the Beverly School Committee received open meeting law training in person from attorney Lauren Goldberg of KP Law on June 19, 2019. And our new members have attended Charting the Course training with myself and Dr. Chirocek on January 11, 2020 at the Everett High School. Additionally, each member of this committee has been provided with a link to a recorded open meeting law training. It was emailed by myself, the chair, on Tuesday, June 9th at 5:47 p.m. after our scheduled in-person training for Monday, March 16th, 2020 was canceled due to the COVID-19 concerns. So online versions of the training had been made available through the Attorney General's office. Since the remote meeting laws have used the online meeting platform, I had the occasion to reach out to our MASC field representative, Dorothy Presser, to ask what the best mechanism is for members to exchange ideas, links, reading materials, etc. She suggested within open meeting continues to be the best way for our members to share ideas with other members. An alternate would be for a member to discuss an idea with the superintendent and ask that she or he forward it along to the committee without disclosing which member or which opinions might go with the reference materials. Therefore, while we would have agreed to a no surprises sentiment in our no norms and protocols retreat, which was also canceled due to COVID-19, I believe that we have respected the boundaries of our norms and protocols in open meeting law by using Dr. Chirocek's weekly emails, our agenda packet, and this online meeting platform to visually provide documents that are entered into the public record from committee members. It is preferable to work with the chair and the superintendent at all times to put meeting items on the agenda with specificity. But outside that convention, open meeting is our next best option to present our ideas. You will be able to find more information detailing the open meeting law by consulting the Open Meeting Law Guide published on the State Attorney General Office's website. As with any complaint, we, the body, will need to decide how we would like to address the complaint in our open session. In future meetings, we can outline how we have addressed it, and all letters will become part of the public record. With this frame of reference, I would like to make a motion that based on the complainant's request to, quote, have our legal counsel review this matter to determine if an open meeting law violation has occurred, and, quote, we vote to delegate the responsibility for the response to school council. So that would be my motion, is that we delegate responsibility for response to school council.
I'll second
Ready?
the motion.
Yeah, I just had a question.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Could you just scroll up, because right now only the people who complained is visible, and yeah, just to get the actual complaint up there for the people watching.
Sure, it is going to be part of our public record here.
Yeah, oh, I know, but just for those at home, it might be helpful.
Yep. So, based on the outcome of our vote on this motion, the next steps would be that I would notify our legal counsel of our decision, and just be aware that they may reach out to any member of the body while drafting our response if they have clarifying questions, and that we should continue not to discuss the matter amongst ourselves or outside of posted meetings. So I believe this is simply a roll call vote. I don't believe we want to have any discussion. So Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Ferretti?
I'm sorry, I had my hand up before we started the roll call vote. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Is this an appropriate time? May I? Before I vote?
So if it affects your vote, yes.
So by us voting right now to allow the attorney to take over, that means we are not going to have any discussions on this at this meeting?
No. That's the typical way that a complaint is addressed.
Okay, so
the complainant specifically had requested, our legal counsel reviewed it, and this is the recommendation for how we proceed.
Okay, I just wanted clarification that after this vote, it would be not discussed. That is correct, right? By us in this meeting.
When there's a response, so that's why I was trying to outline how it occurs in open meeting. When there's a response, that becomes a public document.
Okay, great. Well, my vote is yes then.
Thank you. Karen Robinson?
Yes.
Thank you. John Mulady?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. By a vote of 7-0, the motion to refer the response or delegate the responsibility for response to school council has passed. And again, I will notify our legal counsel of our decision. And just a reminder, please do not discuss this matter amongst ourselves or outside of posted meetings. Okay. Next on our agenda, I just wanted to give the body a quick update. On August 5th in the afternoon, I joined with the superintendent and Brian Ailes, along with our owner's project manager and our construction groups, for a call with the MASB, that's MSBA, sorry. So the middle school building project is actually coming very close to completion. The superintendent, chair, mayor, we will need to sign off on that project. The meeting really focused on the fact that there's some paperwork and coding of receipts, so the expenses need to be properly coded and put into the right buckets. And then we will see drafts of the forms before we need to sign those. And that's when our finance director, Brian Ailes, will be looking to convert short-term borrowing into long-term borrowing and all that stuff that I don't pretend to understand, but I did want to just make sure the body was aware that we are taking the steps towards closing out the project on our beautiful new middle school. And with that, the star of the hour, Dr. Churchek, I believe you have a number of reopening plan updates to share with us, so I'm going to go on mute.
And I'm going to ask if I could share. I have a slide presentation to share to just follow along with the updates.
I muted myself before telling you I released the share, so you may now share. I apologize.
All right, I think that I am sharing right now. And everyone can see my screen, I hope. So I have a number of items to update you on this evening, and I do have some people that have joined us that I'm actually going to call on to help me because it would be within their department, and they did the most of the work on most of these things. So I'd like to have them. So as I go along, I might introduce some people along the way. So some of the areas that I plan on updating you this evening, I have an update on food services. And again, in light of the vote that was taken in the models that we have identified opening the schools in fall at each of the various levels, these updates will reflect some of the information that we're working on along the way. So we'll have information about food service, about transportation. I have some updates from health and safety. I have an athletics update, and then in each of the various levels, I have learning model updates for you as we go forward. So I will begin first taking a look at the food service updates. And I know that Christina Leal is with us here on the call. So I'm wondering, Christina, if you'd like to join me and take over and share the information that you put together for everyone regarding our food service.
Sure. Good evening. So this is our plan for a safe, nutritious meals being served this school year. Of course, our goal is to provide nutritious, tasty meals to all the students in Beverly, and lunch and breakfast will be available for all students in the fall, regardless of if they are remote or in school. So there's a universal free waiver that the state had issued to the USDA. We have not heard back yet, so we are under the assumption that it is not passed. I had to start planning, so we are planning that this waiver did not pass. So what this means is that we can no longer distribute weekend meals, which we have been doing since March. And when parents come to pick up meals at the high school now for remote learners, they will need to identify the student they are picking up food for, and we will need to check them off of a roster. So we have run direct certification and mail applications. And as of right now, 1,347 students have been approved from direct certification. It's 58 more students than this time last year. I did send out a voicemail as well as email via Connect Ed yesterday to encourage the completion of the applications at lunchapp.com. So send money to school, but please do not. This is our site that we have parents can fund the school lunch accounts. We would like to go all remote for in the fall. So any student that does have to pay for lunch, we would want it done all remotely, whether it's through the website. They could send a check to my attention at the high school, and then we will obviously update students or parents if balances are owed on accounts. And then, as always, no child would ever be denied a meal. So the remote learners and remote learning days, we will continue to utilize the high school as a grab-and-go site, especially with not being in session. So we will distribute meals starting Wednesday, 9/16. Each child will receive a lunch for that day and a breakfast for the following day. We will be doing distributions every day, and the times will remain 10:30 to 12:30. Once again, as a note, just to keep in mind that when the parents come, if they have 5 students, we need to know each student and put that into the roster so that they will have to get that checked off. So the plan for K through 4 for breakfast is going to be a grab and go model. It will be through the serving line. Everything will be already assembled in a bag. So it will be a complete serve model. They will not have options, but they will have 2 options of a complete breakfast. So one could be a muffin and one could be a bag of pancakes. They go through, they grab their bags. The cashier or the food service worker will input the name into the register, and then they will eat in the cafeteria 6 feet apart with monitors to ensure social distancing. For K through 4 lunch, once again, we will have 2 different grab and go options. Everything will be a complete meal in a bag for them to take on their way out. One of the options will be a hot sandwich that we want to provide for the students. Distribution tables will be set up and staffed with food service workers at the exit doors of where they are getting dismissed. And there will be because we will not have a POS, we will have a roster by each class. So we will easily be able to check off the students that come through for counting and claiming purposes. We will have a note in all the bags regarding food safety notes on time and temperature to make sure they're following the guidelines to keep the food safe. 5 through 6 breakfast, it's going to be very similar to the elementary schools. We are going to be opening both floors so students can go on the first floor or the third floor. Monitors once again to ensure the 6-foot distance. At this time, we were not planning on selling a la carte, but we could definitely do that later in the month or if we see a need for that. And then lunch, once again, very similar. The hot option that we would be doing offering as well as a cold sandwich. We will be utilizing the 3 registers on the first floor, and then the iPads are movable, so we can relocate them down to the first floor or at different exits, so we can spread out the students as they leave. And once again, this food safety temperature note will be in all the bags for the students. Menus and food safety. So all the menus and food allergies rather, all the menus will be posted on the website. And then any students that do have an allergy can reach out to me directly so we can make sure we're providing them a safe meal. And we're continuing not to serve nuts, and students that do have a gluten-free allergy, we will absolutely be able to accommodate. Any questions?
Christina?
Yeah.
I think we just need to reiterate that this is when school starts about the meals. The first the first slide we talked about universal, that would be starting on the 16th, right?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Miss Abel, you're muted.
I put the video on. You could lip read, right? I'm sorry. I'm struggling with the buttons. Too many buttons today. I saw Ms. Visnick's hand, then Ms. Quayla's hand, and I did thank Ms. Sherburne for adding that clarity.
Okay, my question is very closely related to that. If we could go back to that first slide, please.
Yep. That one?
Right. So
the waiver one.
The waiver one. So when we until we start school, we still will distribute weekend meals. At the point in time when we stop distributing weekend meals, is there there's a subsequent slide that says we have 1,347 students who have qualified, who have direct certified to receive free meals. Is that the number? Is that the same number that will be affected by no more weekend meals? I maybe didn't ask that question well. How many students will no longer get a weekend meal?
So right now we're giving weekend meals to everyone that comes to pick them up. Because it is just a check off, we don't know if they are even Beverly residents, if they are free, if they qualify as reduced. We just know they're coming to pick up meals. On an average, we do 80 meals at the high school on Tuesdays and roughly about 150 to 160 on Fridays. And those are the days that end up getting that weekend meals is on that Friday. The big push on Fridays is because we do deliver the produce boxes as well. So that's why we end up usually seeing a higher turnout on Fridays.
So may I follow up, Ms. Abel?
Go ahead.
So although we have 1,347 students who qualify for free lunch, we're not giving out nearly that many meals now.
Correct.
Okay, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Coelho, I saw your hand next.
Thank you, Madam President. I have 2 questions, actually. For sending the money directly to the website, I know parents have not done it in the past because there is a fee to add money to the website. So is that fee going to be waived for those parents?
No, there still is the fee on the website. They can definitely send in a check and that obviously there's no fee if they send in a check to me, or if they wanted to come, they can bring in cash to me if that is easier. It's just without having registers at pickup, there's no way to deposit the money.
Thank you. And for the second question, if a parent has children at multiple schools, will they have to go to those multiple schools to pick up the lunches, or will they all be able to pick them up at one school?
So as of right now, the central site is going to be at the high school. So they would just pick them up for the high school. And then if they're in school, then the child could pick it up at that school. But if they are all remote, just going to the high school.
Thank you.
Good questions. I'm looking for more hands. Do we have other members with questions for Ms. Leal? I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Ms. Leal, so much for presenting this information to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. All right, and so the next area that I wanted to give you an update is on transportation. And I know that I think both Dana and Jean are here, but I think Jean said she was going to present the information to you for us. So
yes,
you're up, Jean.
Thank you. So what we're doing is giving a transportation update, and here we're talking about, this has been given out before, but mainly what we want to mention is that we are going to only be able to transport grades K through 6th grade that are higher than, live more than 2 miles away from the school, as well as the special education students who require transportation due to their disability. So right now, we're not going to be able to have any fee-based transportation. We've seen this before. This is just reiterating the DESE recommendations for the buses. And that the student seating would be every row, but alternating from window to aisle seat. We'll be boarding, I'm not sure if that's on the next slide, Sue. Nope. Okay. So we will be, I think I say it a little bit later on in the thing, but we'll be boarding the buses that there'll be assigned seating, and we'll be boarding the buses from the back row to the front. And then when we're unloading at the school, we'll be unloading from the front so that students would not be passing other students when they're loading and unloading. We did a survey, and the survey responses, we received 2,756 responses, and 21%, 578 that responded, said that they would be utilizing our transportation. And the remainder of 79% said no. And we do want to reiterate that the masks will be required for all students and adults that are riding the buses, meaning the bus drivers and the monitors, at all times. Safety measures that we need to, this is listed in our reopening plan, that we know all staff and students, regardless of their age, will be wearing masks at all times. Students will be seating no more than one student per bench, alternating signs at each row, which I just said. Windows will be kept open at all times during the operation, unless it's not possible due to extreme weather conditions, which we're not going to have any this year because we've had enough with 2020. Students will be assigned to a single bus and a particular seat, and parents must screen their children for symptoms prior to boarding a vehicle. I did recall earlier in the discussions we were talking about masks. We will have some masks on each of the buses if any students do show up at the bus stop without a mask. We have a timeline that we're working on in the transportation department at this time, July 23rd through August 21st, which is going to be our hard deadline of registration. Mr. Cruikshank sent out a Connect Ed, and we did have many people that signed up as of last night. So we need to know by Friday, the 21st, if people are going to be planning on taking the bus. And reminder, it is only for K through 6th grade. And if your address is 2 miles beyond the school, from the school, or if you're on special education and IEP. And we'll base on our registrations, the distance verified and numbers analyzed. Our department will begin route development and protocols for parents and students, which will be sent out prior to school starts. All drivers and monitors will receive training on safety protocols and procedures for bus transportation in accordance with the return to school guidance. Some of the bus drivers already have received that because they've been working the summer program, but we're assured that we will train all drivers and monitors that information. August 31st to September 4th, we'll finalize our routes. The riders will be informed via email when they do their registration. They give us an email address, their assigned route, and they'll be notified if they do not have a spot on the bus. And that's primarily going to be if somebody does try to register and it's not within our mandated. September 14th is our estimate that we'll finalize the routes, publish them on the website. Lists will be provided to the drivers, develop seating assignments for all grades. We'll be developing that, but the drivers will find out at that time who's supposed to be on their bus, what bus stop, and what seats. And around October 6th, we will review our busing capacity for openings and prioritize if we can pick up any other additional riders based on distance and level. This year is something new that the drivers and monitors will verify student attendance on the bus to and from school. Please note this is a change. Normally we had bus passes for the trips home, but this way we'll know who's on the buses and have that accurate information. Oh, that was it.
Yep. So I would just want to add one thing. It is very, very important this year, as in any other, never, even more than ever before, that parents register their child, because I think there's always been a little bit of leeway the first few days of school to get your child registered and to get them on a bus. We cannot allow any child on a bus that has not got an assigned seat. And then the only way to get that assigned seat is through the registration process. So please, 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 we have been getting the word out, Connect Ed. We will continue to do that. But for students who are K through 6 outside of 2 miles, it's very, very important that you register your child, and because it's the only way that we're going to be able to transport them.
Yes, and I would like to add to that, Dr. Strochek, is that it is very important that we receive that information, because we do want to get the assigned seatings from the back of the bus forward. So if we have some late enrollees, then we're going to have a problem with, now we have to reassign students, and that'll be confusion for the students that you were in that seat. Now you have to be in a different seat.
Thank you, Ms. Sherburne and Dr. Trocheck. I think I see a few hands. Ms. Robinson, did I see a hand?
Yes. I was just wondering when we decided on the 3 feet between the riders on the bus, because I know that when we went on the tour, some of us went on a bus that had 6 foot distance, and we could only fit, I believe, 12, and it looks like the 3 foot distance fits about 23 or 24. I just don't remember when we decided that it would be 3 feet and how we came to that.
Well, that's what I included in the August 14th reopening plan.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't remember that. Okay.
I saw Ms. Coelho's hand next.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, what kind of safety plans do we have to protect staff and other students from those children who may ride the bus that are exempt from masks?
So the riding of the bus, anybody that has it, we have a list of PPE that our school nurses have developed. So if anyone has any issues like that, then the school nurses are made aware of it, and there's specialized PPE that they would be providing for, the drivers and monitors in that case, and spacing and distancing. So as Ms. Robinson just mentioned, so we would look differently at the spacing and distancing for a child that perhaps had an exemption from that.
Thank you. I saw Ms. Visnick's hand next.
In the years past, Jean, I heard you loud and clear that you want everybody's registration in on time, and that deadline is Friday. And so I'll post something a little later tonight about that.
Thank you.
But in the past, having been someone who paid my bus fee but didn't get it in on time, I would pay a late fee, but my child will still be allowed to ride. Now, I understand that will mess up, as you just described. It'll mess up the idea of doing the route in a certain order and assigning children seats. But I guess I'm trying to ask for a definitive. Are we not taking any late registrations?
No, we're not going to be able to take any after August 21st.
Until that October 6th date that it could be revisited.
Yes.
Even if you're beyond 2 miles, even if you're on an IEP.
Yes. I mean, we're hopefully that we have reached out to the special education department on students there. We are sending out Connect Eds. We can have Mr. Cruikshank send out one another night, maybe, to say to all again, just, don't forget registration. I mean, it's very important that we have that done. And yes, I mean, that is, historically, we have an awful lot of people that come late to sign up. We're just going to have to deal with that. But we really need to have a hard deadline, for us to be able to meet the dates to make sure that we can develop those routes, because some areas, there's certain streets that are going to have 3 buses because there's so many students that live on that street that we have to make sure, and they're more than 2 miles away from the school. So we're going to have that, issue too. And then now we've got to get it out to them, which bus is theirs, et cetera, et cetera. So there's like 3 bus stops on one particular street. That may be, of course, we have to wait till we get all of the enrollees registered in to know where people are. But yes, that is.
So there's only going to be one exception to that, and that would be if a student's IEP calls for it and it's executed, after that date, or it's added to their IEP. We cannot not transport special ed students if it's written into their IEP. So Bethany, I know, has done reaching out individually with phone calls to every single person to make sure that they're aware of this, those students that qualify in that manner. But if someone were to qualify either after that date, we would have to make exceptions on that matter. I think, Bethany, am I correct on that one?
That's correct. Yep. Technically, transportation is a related service as part of the IEP, so it would be added.
And that may also impact homeless students as well. I mean, there are certain compliance issues that we would still have to work around. But I can't emphasize enough the challenge that Jean is explaining to you about trying to set up the routes and the boarding and the assignments and all of that. So please reach out to anyone that you know. And we have been working really hard on our communication to get in touch with. I think we sent particular Connect Eds directly to anyone who rode the bus before. So it's not only that we've just sent general ones out, but we've sent directed to people who have already previously been riders on our bus. So we're working really hard to make that communication strong.
I wanted to provide the committee an observation as someone who lives in beautiful Ryleside, where I live less than half a mile from the elementary, about a mile to the middle school, and less than 2 miles to the high school. Even I received this Connect Ed, so I feel like a wide net was cast in prior years, and historically, I've never heard anything about a bus. What bus? There's no bus. You live too close. But I was very thankful to receive such good information from Mr. Cruikshank. So I think it got out there. Hopefully our Connect Ed troubles are behind us, and the message has gotten out. But anything that we can do, obviously, to further communicate out, to make sure people are on that deadline, I think would be important for a constituent service that we provide.
Thanks.
I mute myself as I talk. Are there any more questions for Ms. Sherburne regarding transportation? Okay, Dr. Church, I believe health and safety was your next.
Yeah, so health and safety is the next. Really, this is
I'm
just.
sorry, Rachel. I had one question.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Mighty, I didn't see you.
That's okay. I probably should know the answer to this, so I apologize if this was said or in a meeting in the spring, but were families given a refund or partial refund for transportation for the 2019 school year for their fee and or given credit for the upcoming?
So we did not issue refunds for the 2019. However, anyone that had sent their money in for this year thinking that they were going to be eligible for a paid transportation, we have refunded the fee that they sent in to us now, knowing that we're only K-6. Jean, that's correct?
Correct.
I signed the warrant and I saw the number of payments going back to parents. So rest assured it's getting processed.
Yes, I do believe that we have a few refunds that we're still issuing for this current year, that people did make payments before we shut down the Unipay, where the payments were able to come in.
And thank you, Ms. Sherburne, for making sure that got done, because it was confusing, but the payment was still an option.
Yes.
All right. So next, just a little bit of information on health, a couple of items on health and safety. I really wanted to take this opportunity in one way to explain, and I know many of you may have already heard about the 14-day metric models that have come out. One of the things that's been occurring in the last couple of weeks is there's been a lot of collaboration between the Department of Ed and the Department of Public Health, which is really good. I think in the beginning, we were getting sometimes some mixed messages, and so they're working very closely to share information and to collaborate and make sure that the guidance that comes from one is aligned with the guidance that comes from another. So it's been really helpful to us in the last couple of weeks. The most recent thing that came out, and actually I think came out the day after our last meeting, so I haven't had the opportunity to share yet publicly, the 14-day metric model. So what they have come up with is a rolling 14-day metric to assist sort of school districts and local communities to understand what the level of transmission is within their own city, within their own community. And so they've created some guidelines and some metrics that they're using. Average daily cases per 100,000 is one metric that they use, and that determines a color coding. So they're using like a stoplight model, red, yellow, green, and then white. And it sort of measures how is your community doing. How many cases per 100,000 are you seeing? It measures whether you're increasing or decreasing in transmission rates, and it monitors positive testing as well. So the reason that this is kind of important, I really wanted you to see this graphic because I'll be referencing it again later when I talk about athletics. But what they've created is this color-coded chart. So if you hear someone say, oh, that community is in the red, you'll understand that what that means is that the average daily cases in that community that are being identified is greater than 8 out of 100,000. If they're said that they're yellow, those average daily cases range between 4 and 8. If a city is green, then the average daily cases are less than 4. And then if they're unshaded or white, as we've been calling them, that means that they've had fewer than 5 total cases over the past 14 days. In that, aligned with that stoplight, the Department of Ed has sort of set out some guidance to help people think about what model of learning might be most appropriate for their district. And so they've aligned that as well based upon the color coding. And again, they also utilize this metric for athletics, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that I was sharing it with all of you and that we had an opportunity to understand what we were talking about when we saw that. Finally, here's a picture of Massachusetts. This one came off. This is actually the August 12th data. I will let you know that they update this data every Wednesday at 4 p.m. And it's available on the Department of Public Health website. I think it's their website. It's I will get a URL to those of you that are interested in looking for that. And what you see is they kind of color code the community so you can have a pretty good picture of what it looks like in the areas. And again, that's a 4 p.m. measure that is shown. So I just really wanted you to have a working knowledge. I will come forward maybe next week with a little bit more information around that, maybe on some trends on how Beverly is looking. But it's something that I know that there's been conversation and discussion among the members that, what are the metrics? How are we measuring? What pieces of information are we utilizing? And here's just one measure that we can use. It's not, I don't think it stands on its own for anything, but I think it's definitely something that gives us a really good starting point for discussions around how we're faring.
I see some questions. Ms. Visnick, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. Dr. Trocheck, do we have any data, or could we get data around the children who are coming into our district, whether via school choice or whether they're going to be the children of our educators who will be being taken care of in the quote unquote daycares in our schools for our educators? Data around how many children coming from quote unquote outside are coming from communities that are I'll call it a worse color than we are, as opposed to hard, right? Because right now we're green, so that would mean yellow or red, but we could move, right? We could be a different color. And so I think it's very important for us to look at as a one piece of our data, how many children do we have coming in, or adults for that matter, right? When we have teachers coming from other communities, to put that into our big multivariate equation for risk factors, especially if we have some number coming from communities that are already in the red.
That data would be available. I don't have it at the ready now, but it certainly would be something that we could get.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thanks. Did I see a second hand? Or maybe someone was just adjusting their... Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Trocheck.
All right, so that was one piece of information. And then the second piece of information you may have heard, it came out earlier today, and I think it's gotten a lot of attention. I just want to make you aware that there is a new influenza vaccine requirement for school attendance. That's for kindergarten through 12th grade, so that beginning in the 2021 school year, the vaccine will be required of all students. I don't want to go too deep into this because I have not had an opportunity to work with June Casis or anything, or how. There's a number of regulations that go along with it in terms of how we can communicate with the pediatrics, groups in the area, how the nurses can access that information. There was also actually a second requirement around, and I don't know how to say the word, meningococcal, kind of something that I don't know how to say, vaccine for students as they turn 16. So now you know the strength of my medical knowledge, and I really don't want to go too deeply into this. I just wanted to make you all aware that there was this requirement that was out, and because I'm sure you'll hear about it. I do have a little bit of information, non-medical information about it, and that's sort of which students would need to receive the vaccine, and that would be students in K through 12. And they, when would they need it? They need to have it by December 31st. That's the deadline for having it for the current flu season. And the exemptions, the same exemptions that might apply to other things, the medical and religious exemptions would still apply. So again, I don't have a whole lot of information. It's sort of something that's just newly breaking, but I feel like it's important to have some information and understanding that it's at least happening.
I saw Ms. Visnick's hand, and then I'll call on myself, if that's all right.
You should call on yourself first every once in a while. I will defer to you.
Well, my question is, when you talk to June Casey's, would you have an idea about maybe working with our public health department to issue some clinics? Because in-person doctor visits are really difficult, and CVS, I do not believe, treats children. So,
right. I think I'm going to put a caution on this too. I think it's a requirement that's come out. I am hoping that the medical community is prepared to have the amount of vaccines that they might need to have when they put a requirement like this out for the number of students that are K to 12 and college age. So I'll always be watching to see what happens with this. But I definitely, June and the Board of Health and any other agencies that we can in terms of making it easier and better. I did hear a data point which said that in Massachusetts, 81% of the students already get the vaccine. So without even it having been a requirement, they had some data that said that 81% of students were already, accessing the influenza vaccine in the past few years. So I'm hoping that that's true, because that means we're really only working with 19% who aren't, customarily getting it. So.
As a parent to young children, it's usually offered during annual physicals, and siblings are allowed to come along, but those conditions have changed, and physicals aren't even really getting scheduled, and siblings are definitely not welcome. So thank you. And Ms. Visnick, I don't know if that was your question, or you have something else to ask?
I have something else. I wonder if, without being, I will attempt to be to not be disrespectful to anyone who might have a religious exemption to this new requirement. I wonder if the people who are opposed to getting their children vaccinated will cause a change to their enrollment, because K to 4, we already made everybody make their choice. And so the question is, I guess it's a multi-part question. And one is that, like, are you expecting that the numbers may well change, right? That some people who said, oh, I want to come in person, now are going to say, no, I'm not coming in person because I'm not going to vaccinate my child. And number two is, are they going to be allowed? Are you going to allow people to change even though we already passed the deadline?
So there's clarification to be had, but the initial indications were that it was going to apply to remote learners as well. Not sure how that was going to be enforced, but the initial indications were that it would apply to remote learners as well. But that I'm not going to say that with conviction until I have more information. And so again, sometimes I want to come forward with information and share. I think in the last 3 months, I've learned, if I've learned nothing else, that information brings more information and more information. And so I think I just really wanted to put on your radar that there was a new requirement in case you started hearing about it and wondering about it. And I will certainly keep my ear to the ground for any, and I definitely know that June Cases will be able to kind of come forward with us for any more information and questions that we have as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Do other members have a question? I don't see any hands. Okay, thank you, Dr. Trocek.
Madam President?
Oh, there we go. Mayor Cahill just came back. Yes.
I tried to ask a question before we switched over to the vaccine, but I wasn't, I was kind of last second, so I let it go. I just want to share a bit of data, and I'll try to keep sharing it for you folks. But since Dr. Trocek had shown the color-coded map on positive COVID cases per population, just wanted to share with you that the last 8 days in Beverly, and I get my numbers daily from the Department of Health, the last 8 days we've had 8 new COVID cases in Beverly. So we're averaging 1 a day, which is not, that's pretty consistent with the last couple months. So, in spite of some concerns that we all have with where things might be at and heading, we continue to be in a pretty good place locally. I'll keep trying to update those numbers for you as they come into me. To my mind, the most important number, since we still don't do enough testing, some of the nearby communities are doing more testing because they've been identified by the state as areas of concern and are getting access to a lot more free local testing. So we're still not doing enough testing in Beverly, but nonetheless, the positives are staying down, which is good. I think the most relevant piece of data is how many people are in the hospital at any given point in time with a diagnosis of COVID. And I'll try to get an update on that as well and share with that to you folks when I get it. I'm supposed to get a weekly update from the hospital tomorrow. If I do get that, I'll share that with Dr. Trocek and out to everybody, because I think it's data that we all want to stay on top of. So thanks.
Okay, just do one more careful check for questions.
I think Ms. Ferretti has a question.
Oh, I can't see her. Where did she go?
Right here.
Go ahead. Oh, there you are.
Thank you.
Oh, you're underneath.
Oh, I just actually, I wanted to piggyback on Mayor Cahill's question and maybe just ask, I know we're talking about testings and some communities are facilitating them in like a public area, community center or city hall. And I wondered if there's any plans to open city hall in the near future to maybe assist with the distribution of any resources or.
Madam President, that's a stream of consciousness. Should we go with it? No, it's a question a lot of people are asking. I don't mind just giving a quick update. We're running a help desk right outside the front door of City Hall. We've got people in there working as have been right along. And so the public now has somebody to interact with and get answers to questions and get people from inside the building to come out and help them. We are required to have the early in-person voting take place in City Hall starting this coming Saturday and running for 8 days. And our plan is to open City Hall in a phased manner right after Labor Day. We're still determining whether that initially is going to be appointment only for certain matters where others are still easily done online and by mail. But we're working on that and we'll have more to say about it as soon as we have it sorted. Okay, thanks for asking.
Thank you for the answer. I have a lot of people, when they're talking about schools, asking about City Hall too. So thank you for addressing that. I appreciate it.
And if I could bring it back to our own meetings, one of the benefits of having our meetings remotely is that we have so much participation from the public right now, because obviously we are having important discussions at the table. And that's one thing that we'll need to consider. When do we want to return to in-person? I know our September calendar is coming up with curriculum instruction student life. In typical times, we might not exceed the 25 people, but more recently, we have certainly seen 400 to 500 to 600 viewers of this meeting. And big shout out to everyone who's sticking with us into our second and a half hour here. We just need to be mindful of making sure we maintain public access for all of our meetings as well as being mindful of the challenges that we're encountering. I know tonight, I apologize again. I don't know why my sound keeps going out, but it seems that cutting the video helps. Anyway. And any more questions for Dr. Jurczyk? I see Ms. Robinson's hand now.
Thank you. I was just, I'm hearing a few times where we have exceptions. So sometimes with masks, we have exceptions and, medical and religious exemptions for receiving the flu vaccine that we just heard today. And I'm just wondering, can we stress the importance of these things? And if people choose not to follow along, can we do anything about, maybe highly suggesting that these folks go into our remote learning academy or our remote learning choice that we have for people?
So again, I'm going to defer to wait until June has an opportunity. So our school nurses really are the ones that work really closely, especially anything around any of the immunizations and vaccine, now this flu vaccine and screenings and all of those things. So I would defer to June first to find out, and they work very closely. And, I think when we talk about anything medical, I'm very conscious of the fact that it's a very confidential process and all of that. So again, I think I'm just going to ask to wait until I have a chance for June to weigh in and talk about all those things. And I don't even know, there's the word is requirement, right? So what lives behind that word requirement? And I'm not really sure yet. So I will come back with more information for you on that one. And
just also maybe even the possibility of kids having their temperature taken and faculty having their temperature taken. It might not be a bad idea. And if I don't know if we can somehow get the funds to do something like that, I think it would just be a smart move on our part.
Well, I think in terms of some of those screening ideas, the CDC and the Department of Public Health have weighed in, as have our local board of health, and June worked really closely to see which of those are, will yield the information that we need or what we would do. So again, I would defer to them, and I couldn't even say the word of the other immunization. So my medical knowledge is not really there. I usually do defer to the people that have that information. So.
Thank you.
Okay, now I believe I have everyone visible on my screen. I do not see any more hands, so please proceed, Dr.
Okay.
Turchek.
All right, well, the next, I actually received a couple of emails throughout the day wondering about the sports. The information has recently been released from the Department of Ed, and I have information to share with you, up-to-date information that I have. This is joint guidance issued from Department of Ed and MIAA, and sort of this is just a summary of the guidance that we have. And I thank Mr. Keefe for putting together some of these slides for me and getting ready the information. So the MIAA and DESE collaborated to provide the sports guidance for the school year of 2021. They also, in consultation with medical advisors and the EEA, developed sport-specific modifications, and I'll address them in the next few slides. So the first thing that I want to share is that the MIA will utilize the COVID-19 14-day metric. So that's why it was important for me to share with you that green, red, yellow stoplight that we looked at earlier to determine whether a district's allowed to participate in interscholastic activities. Any district that is in the red is not going to be allowed to participate. One other area that they have addressed is they said that if schools determine that they will begin the year in a remote learning model, then it will be up to the local school committee to give approval whether or not they can participate as a school district in fall sports. They identified individual sports that fall into high-risk categories. Football, cheer, and unified basketball can only practice in the fall. They will, however, hold a season February 22nd to April 25th. And any high-risk winter sport may also be moved into that season. They've, in essence, created a fourth season, and you'll see that when you see my last slide. It outlines the different seasons. And they identified those high-risk winter sports as girls and boys hockey, wrestling, and girls and boys basketball. They also considered high risk to be girls and boys lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, and rugby. They listed minimum modifications that all sports must adhere to in the EEA guidance, and that is to achieve that if they're going to address inter-team competition. There's additional guidance that is going to be coming prior to the beginning of every season from EEA, and then MIAA will make its final decision for each season following the updated guidance. So I realized I was throwing a lot of acronyms your way. I think everyone probably knows MIAA, but the EEA is the Energy and Environmental Affairs. They're the ones that issued the guidelines around some of the modifications for the sport. So they have very specific directions as to what and how the things can take place. The individual sports have modifications, locker rooms, spectators, minimum standards for modification to play, protective equipment and facial coverings for all sports, social distancing guidelines for players and spectators, hygiene guidelines, staffing and operation guidelines, cleaning and disinfecting guidelines, and guidelines for concession stands. So here are the seasons, the sports and dates. September 18th to November 20th will be a fall sports. It would be girls and boys soccer, fall gymnastics, girls and boys cross country, field hockey, girls volleyball, swim and dive, and golf. They would say that November 30th to February 21st would be the winter sports. And again, they did put a little disclaimer that girls and boys basketball, girls and boys hockey, wrestling may be moved into that new season that they created. However, that they're going to wait and see where the data takes them on that. However, gymnastics, indoor track, alpine ski, Nordic ski, winter cheer, dance, swim and dive. I wonder if winter cheer may also move. I didn't see that one mentioned. Again, they created the fall sports 2 season beginning on February 22nd. So football, fall cheer, unified basketball, and sports that were not played in the fall season because of remote or other. And then April 26th to July 3rd, spring sports season, baseball, softball, girls and boys lacrosse, girls and boys tennis, boys volleyball, girls and boys outdoor track, rugby, sailing, girls Gold and Crew. I'm not really sure what Gold Crew means. So then finally, it leads us to these considerations. You know, transportation is something that we're going to need to look at. Some of our sports have 3 teams. Some sports will be playing 2 seasons. The availability of playing fields and practices due to the overlap of seasons, what we would need to do around signage for the playing areas, the guidelines we'd have to be looking at, all of those guidelines individually for our facilities and for the modifications they may take, and the idea that there's a shortened game schedule for each team. So that's a summary of the information that we got on sports. I would be happy to try to answer some of your questions. I'm not sure if Dan Keefe is here. I believe he may be. He may be able to answer some of the questions better than I do if I don't have the answers. So
I'm not sure that I see him. I see a couple of hands, and I called on myself first last time. So Ms. Visnick, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So Dr. Chirocek, I'm going to throw you this one, and I do not see Mr. Keefe on the call, so I'm going to apologize in advance.
That's okay.
Do you know if there has been much, if any, conversation amongst the athletic directors around being able to accommodate a fluid schedule? Because if you are in a community that is allowed to play today, you might not be allowed to play tomorrow. And conversely, tomorrow a team might be able to come in and play because they come out of the red or they come out of the yellow.
That's a great question. I don't know about conversation among athletic directors because I did not speak directly with Dan today. I spoke with Betty and Dan, and he put the slides together for me. I will say that I know that there's conversations among the high school principals, for one thing, but I also know that I believe I heard that there's going to be a date at which your status is determined, so to speak, right? So it may be September 1st or September 5th or something like that, that's going to be the date at which they look at the metric. And I don't believe they're going to allow the ins and outs of all of that. I think there's going to sort of be a decision-making time. So I don't have all of the specifics on that. I just think I heard something about something like that. So I will absolutely be looking for more. Again, this guidance has only been out for 36 hours, and a lot of people are scrambling, and it's obviously a very important topic and a very hot topic. So we're all looking for more information as we can get it. And, you know, again, the fluidity, that word you just used, of the situation around everything that comes our way, I'm hesitant to make strong declaration statements about anything right now.
Right. So a follow-up, Ms. Abel, or I'll wait. You can
go ahead. No, go ahead. So,
you know, we don't have new business on our agendas, nor do we have the ability to do a late file. So, which is a whole nother thing that maybe we could talk about on some future meeting, putting one or both of those back into play. But when do you think that this might come to us for a vote? Have you thought about that at all? Because to be very clear, right? So to say to everybody watching from home, because our email boxes are already a little bit warm. I won't say on fire. They're certainly not on fire yet, but they're warm with people asking about this, right? And the fact of the matter is, we can't vote on this tonight, even if we wanted to, because we don't have anything in our constructs to allow a new item to be onto our agenda. However, I do think that there's a decent amount of information that will be needed in order for us to take a vote. And I think that, again, people are going to want that vote to happen sooner rather than later. And I think that some of the answer about the fluidity, in specifically, if we go into our conference is pretty large, the conference in which the Beverly teams normally play. And they are in a conference with some communities that are currently red. And so even if we made the determination on, you know, pick your date, September 1st, and we made a schedule with, let's say, 10 teams instead of like the 12 or the 14 that are supposed to be in there. If one of those towns turns red, I don't want my town playing against, I don't want my city playing against that city that went red, right? So that will be, I think, an important piece of information that when we finally put this on our agenda and we have the conversations around it, we'll need that kind of information to be able to make our decision.
Yeah, I 100% understand the question, and I, as I will be getting information. I know that Mrs. Taylor was in my office at 5 o'clock this afternoon, telling me that the North Shore principals were having a very strong conversation about it, and they're very invested in making sure that good decisions are made and how that would work and what would some competition schedule look like among the local area teams, and knowing that we do have 3 teams in the NEC that are red right now. So if the decision were today, they would be excluded, right? So, this is something to, we'll keep watching, and I promise you I'm bringing forward every bit of information that I can as it comes in, but I don't want to go too far and give information that's misinformation. So as soon as I have it factual, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Ms. Visnick, you started to ask my question. I was thinking that our planned meeting for August 26th would be an ideal time to put this on our agenda. I am hoping that we have some more information. I appreciate that this is information that's just coming out. Anecdotally, I know that for our youth sports, I have experience or a connection with the soccer youth sports, and as Dr. Chokchik said, half of the teams that our students would play against are in red right now. And so, to be fair to communities, early decision making helps set expectations and allows for creative workarounds. And I think if the group's amenable, that would be something I'd like to see on our agenda next week. And hopefully Dr. Churchek, with the help from Dan Keefe and Betty Taylor, might be able to have, some of our questions and concerns answered so that we'd be able to make a reasonable, informed vote next week.
And I guess I would just ask as questions, hopefully you'll keep getting the emails and you'll just send questions to me. But we all know how our inboxes have been over the last few weeks. But if you do have questions that you want me to address, that would be great if you could send them to me, much like we do in some of our subcommittees, get the questions in early. I can make sure that Mrs. Taylor and Dan Keefe have them. I promise they'll be meeting regularly over the next couple of weeks, particularly the athletic directors with what they have to put together. So we can certainly try to get the answers to those questions. And I would love to try to have that ready for you for August 26th. So,
thank you. I saw 2 hands. I saw Mr. Milady's just a fraction of a second before Mayor Cahill.
Mine's just a quick question. So just to clarify for, to keep our high ratings on BevCam. So there's a possibility that on August 26th, we will be voting on this. Thank you.
Mayor Cahill, do you have a similar question or?
I have a lot of questions, but I'll try to keep it to one statement and a couple of questions.
Okay.
So when we vote on this, I would hope that we're not going to be expecting to know that we would vote. If we vote on this a week from tonight, we're not going to know for sure what other communities might be playing or not in a fall season. Right? That would be my expectation. That's too soon to know. And the reason I say that is the state is pouring a lot of resources into these communities that are showing up yellow and red, specifically to try to get the virus under control in those communities and bring those numbers down and get them out of those color codes for a lot of important and good reasons. And one of the benefits may be that they can do more this fall with their school children than it may look like today in mid-August, right? So all the resources for free testing in these sites in Salem and Lynn and other places, and coming with that, really aggressive, hopefully effective contact tracing, because we all know that the contact tracing is only effective when when people get tested and when the results come back quickly. So it would be my hope that any certain community that's currently showing yellow or red may be in a much better place in a month's time. So I just make that point. And then I do have a couple of questions for Dr. Trochik. Could we look at the season sports and dates slide? And could I ask you, Dr. Trochik, whose work product these different slides are? Because I know that Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs put out some guidance, and then MIAA and DESI together did. So whose work product is each of these slides?
I'm looking, I believe this one comes off of the EEA or it could be the DESI guidance. I believe he took it right off of the guidance. I do know that.
Okay. So we don't need to go to the slide that was up a minute ago, but that other slide with some bulleted points did say that certain sports are playing 2 seasons. That's not really accurate. Certain sports are showing in, they certainly wouldn't be playing 2 seasons. Some sports are showing as potentially being played in one or another of seasons, correct?
I'm going to have to defer that question right now, the specifics of that, to Dan Keefe.
Yeah.
And I apologize. I apologize for that. Again, I'm trying to bring forward information about so that people have a general idea. And this information has come in very recently. So
well, yeah, let me say it differently. I shouldn't ask you. I'm going to express my opinion here. I believe that that was just a little bit of awkward wording in that other slide. The thought is that fall sports that are high risk are not being played in the fall. The hope is they might be able to be played in this new season, February through April. And some of the winter sports are shown as, yeah, they're winter sports, but they might also get pushed to the new season.
Correct.
And so they'd be played once, not 2 seasons, 1 season, if they can be played. And again, I'm just going to give an opinion.
Yes, but may they be allowed to practice in their fall season? They're allowed to practice, but not play competitions, but they can practice out of season. I believe that's what it's relating to.
That's a good point. All right. Okay. I hadn't thought of it that way. Okay. Thank you for that. And then I guess I'm just conjecturing here that the reason this new season has been created is clearly that there's a hope we may be in a better place come that time that will allow the high risk activities.
Yeah.
And then I want to point out that we do have a varsity ultimate disc program.
Yep.
And while it was mentioned as a high risk sport earlier on, it's not listed in any of these seasons.
I think it was in the new season. I'm sorry if it didn't make the list on this page, but I believe in the original slide it was said it was going to go to the new season.
So it's a spring sport. So my assumption would be that it's going to be played in the spring, if at all. Yeah.
Again, I can get clarification. I don't have the specifics, but I do know it was on the list at some point. And
yeah, I've seen it left out of some of the lists that the state has provided. And I think that's kind of, it's a varsity sport in some districts, a club in others.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's entirely an MAA governed sport. That may be where the confusion is.
That could be, you're right. But I do know that from the youth sports or from the EEA, it was listed as a high risk sport. And you're right. I bet you it's exactly that because it doesn't necessarily come under the MIAA, why it isn't on some of the other lists, but it would be scheduled. It's my impression that it would be run as scheduled unless, otherwise. And maybe some people run it in the fall and that's why it made the list that way. So I'm not really sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Milady, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. So I know we all know we're going to have a much more robust conversation on this, and Sue, thank you so much for this quick turnaround, just having this information presented to you earlier. But I guess it's this is a question dash comment because I think it's a good reminder, for ourselves and also for the public about, we're not responsible for the how. So if any district decides to approve that has a high school go remote and approve of RC or athletics in general, it's not up to us. I'm guessing it'd be up to MIAA for those guidelines about what the safety requirements are going to be. Like we're not going to put, our basketball teams in little bubbles like they're doing in the NBA. So
Right.
I wouldn't want to watch that reality show either. I prefer Below Deck, but I guess so. They're going to give us the guidelines.
Yep. And there's so in each sport, MIAA has a committee for each sport, and on each sport, there's a committee that's a COVID task force sort of type committee, and they've been looking very closely at what modifications and safety and security at each individual sport level. So I will bring forward as much information as I can to you, and I'll get it to you when I have it available. But that is, I'm glad you made the distinction. The reason that it is a decision to be made at the school committee local level right now is it's versus a high school that is in remote and contemplating running varsity sports. That's why it rather than just you would be eligible if you were in a hybrid model or a in-person model. It's about whether or not you want to participate.
Okay. Do we have any further questions on this topic? Again, recognizing we'll be revisiting it next week, hopefully with our questions in Dr. Churchak and Dan Keefe's hands before our meeting. I think we're good, Dr. Churchak.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move on to the different models that we have. I think there's a couple of items in here that will spur some conversation among you, and so that's good. That's why we're here. So first of all, I have the preschool update, and I know that I have Bethany on the call. So Bethany, did you want to just walk us through the preschool, just an update as to what's been going on?
Sure. Yep. Thank you. So as we know, our preschool students are scheduled to attend in-person instruction. We have our 5-day intensive and intensive integrated programs, which will attend daily with an early dismissal. We have our 4-day AM and PM integrated programs, and then we have our related therapies, which will occur both either in person or remote based on parent preference. In terms of parent communications, we have made phone calls to each and every family of our preschool students to confirm the enrollment and to determine what the transportation needs are for the fall. We did have to make some minor changes to our classrooms in order to maintain smaller class sizes. Generally, historically, we have higher enrollment in our AM programs compared to our PM programs. So we did make some minor changes, but all of the changes were changes that the families were very agreeable to. So we do have some families who are continuing to opt for remote services, despite the fact that we have our in-person services that are being offered. We are still planning on holding our screening on September 2nd. This is a requirement as part of Child Find, and it's also a way for us to get peers for our integrated program. So our screening will take place as scheduled, but we have new safety protocols in place to have fewer students present at one given time. And we also are screening fewer students than we have in the past. In terms of our re-entry planning, we've been meeting regularly on a weekly basis with our staff members to develop entry and exit protocols, to update room configurations to allow for social distancing. We've been developing new building schedules to allow for the dismissals, use of bathrooms, use of outside spaces, and also looking at our material needs because we know that our students will not be sharing materials like they have in the past. So we're looking at having individual materials for students so that we're not sharing buckets of crayons like we have in past days. We're also creating a new classroom space for our additional classroom that was added due to our increased enrollment. And we're also looking to develop our outdoor spaces so that we've got increased opportunities for outdoor learning, chances for students to have mask breaks, and also to have snack time outside.
All right. Any preschool questions? All right, thanks, Bethany.
Welcome.
So then we also, I'm also going to and you'll see a pattern. I just sort of wanted to give a roundup for all of you as to the steps that we've been taking since the vote, what we've done, what we're continuing to work on, and then address any questions that you would have. So this is the information regarding the elementary. The elementary work has been I have to take a moment and say both to Bethany and to Dr. Flaherty and to the elementary and middle and high school principals and teams, the work that has been accomplished in the last, I would say it's maybe 14 days or 10 days, has been amazing. They've been hard at work, working on taking and developing and building a remote learning academy. We have been working with families, identifying and answering questions and figuring out and helping families make decisions about enrollment. Our We've completed the enrollment for the Remote Learning Academy based upon the preferences that we've heard from people. We are working on identifying staffing needs for both the in-person and the Remote Learning Academy. We are looking at what we're doing for the physical space, including with decals, including desk placement markers, directionality signs, physical distancing visual cues that we're working on throughout the buildings for the in-person learning. I think you'll hear an enormous theme across all of our levels, because we believe that if nothing else, the new models that we're proposing have created a tremendous opportunity for us to expand our pedagogical outlook on some things. And one thing in particular is outdoor learning. We all know that it is a safer place for all of us to be outside. It's more comfortable for students at this point in time. And so we have brought in a consultant to work with us. The consultant is visiting each one of our schools and identifying outdoor learning spaces that can be converted into outdoor learning classroom space, providing us some professional development as to how teachers would make a shift from teaching a class at an indoor space into an outdoor space, how to take advantage of that, what types of structures and things that we would want to have in place, locations, how would we make that work. We've been looking at flexible options for furniture and materials for outdoor learning. I'll give you an example. A simple 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot with a cover turns into a great way to carry materials outside. Flip it over. You have a seat when you're out there. You have a tabletop if you kneel down on the ground. So we're looking at all the flexibilities that we can. We've had tree stumps that have been ordered that will be placed around the campus to become small learning spaces for students. And we have been investigating the procurement of tents. These are proving to be very expensive, so I'll just give you the heads up on that one. That I'm not sure in the in a value added what a value added it has or not. We're going to make that judgment. Tents are far more expensive than I ever imagined. When I go to a wedding next time, I'll be very much aware of a tent that I'm sitting inside. And in addition, we have been looking at. I think I went ahead here on my, so the other things we've been doing in terms of the in-person instruction and the Remote Learning Academy, as a matter of fact, is looking at our curriculum roadmaps. We made a commitment that one of the things we learned through our emergency learning in the spring was the need for a tightening of our cohesion across schools, and in particular now with the creation of the Remote Learning Academy, where we'll be intermingling students perhaps from 2 schools in a classroom. It's very important that we have well-developed scope and sequence. We're in good hands with Dot Flaherty. She has taken that on, and I don't question a thing. She is very much in charge of that. So we're looking very closely at that. They have worked together to create assessment calendars, class lists, supply lists. We're looking at the procurement of furniture and materials for classroom use. So for both the Remote Learning Academy and for the in-person, we realize we need to have the same learning materials for at-home learners as we do in the classroom in terms of some of our core programming, whether it's our Reading Street or our Foundations or our Zern math program or ST Math or any of those things. And then finally, that we've been working on the same thing that Bethany said. Every building has been reaching out to each family. When we were going through our enrollment process for Remote Learning Academy, we physically reached out with a phone call to anyone that we hadn't heard from to make sure that we have close to accurate numbers on as we plan our class lists for remote learning and for in-person. Within buildings, we've been making changes to classrooms again to maintain the smaller classroom sizes. We're continuing to work to look at what and how we can outfit our kindergarten classrooms to make them work in a developmentally appropriate way. We're planning welcome back activities. I know that at least a couple of the schools have begun their parent forums, which are, I think, being conducted in Google Meet right now. And then principals are planning their welcome back activities in person at the end of the summer and perhaps in the first 10 days that we have. So And then one area that we wanted to talk about tonight, the principals have spent a lot of time in discussion about how to safely establish routines as we re-enter our buildings. And one of the things that they have proposed is delaying the start of kindergarten in the following manner. So if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, it probably wasn't even that long ago, we would always delay the start of kindergarten. We would bring back grades 1 through 5 at the time, and we would hold in those first few days of school an orientation and screenings and school visits. And we believe that this year more than ever, those screenings, we used to bring 18 or 20 kids in at a time and put them in rooms with 6 different people doing the screenings. We think that's going to be a big challenge for us. So we're hoping to offer orientation during those first 3 days of the first week, and then and screenings into the middle of the next week. And so we're proposing that for kindergarten only, we have September 24th be the first day of in-person instruction. They would have been in the building several times, once for their orientation, perhaps for their screening, and also for a visit. And those would be set up by appointment only so that we could manage how we do that. And that is what I have for elementary, so.
Ms. Bisnick, I see your hand, then Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Dr. Truchik, I wonder if you can speak to a question that I forwarded to you in email this past weekend around the number of parents that have chosen the in-person model, and specifically how that impacts kind of the breakdown in between in-person and the RLA, and how that impacts how many children we're going to have in any given building, and how that then in turn impacts how many classrooms we have. And I think that people are looking for a reassurance, and hopefully we can give it, that the 5-day model for K-4 was presented as being able to preserve a 4.5 to 5 foot distancing.
Yeah.
And yet I'll just say there's a lot of chatter that a lot of people chose that model. And so now people are concerned that maybe the attendance will negatively impact our ability to make good on that expectation.
Yeah, I had a few sleepless nights myself, just wondering if that was going to happen. I have good news that, and the good news is that actually the enrollments ended up exactly as we had predicted based upon the 2 surveys that we had done. I think, and I don't want to quote an exact number, but it exceeds 300. We will have 15 sections of the Remote Learning Academy. Maybe 16, depending on the last numbers that trickled in. We will have it is amazing to me that it always works out the way that it does, but it was as was predicted and what we were hoping for. So our enrollment numbers worked the way that we hoped they would. We're still confident with our 4.5 to 5 foot distancing in our classrooms. That's we've been working together for the last 4 or 5 days, making sure, crunching numbers, individually calling families, confirming whether they were coming or not coming, so that we're at the point now where we're actually putting together class lists. So teachers will have class lists pretty soon in their hands, which is sooner than we even thought we would be able to do that. We're also in the process of identifying staff for the Remote Learning Academy. We have posted the Remote Learning Academy teaching positions, and at the elementary, we've already identified over 50% of the staff that we'll be using for the Remote Learning Academy. We have just opened the posting, so I'm confident that we'll fill. But those, we worked very hard to match teachers who had either significant medical conditions that really warranted that they would be able to work best in a remote learning situation, along with teachers who had a love for remote learning and believe that this is a really great opportunity to learn a new way of doing business. So we're feeling very good about the work that's been done to date. It's actually a relief to get to the point where we're actually really thinking about teaching and learning instead of the specific technical aspects of how many desks and how many feet away will the desks be from each other. And so we've kind of moved on to what will an outdoor learning classroom look like, and how will we capitalize on that, and what will we do with staffing, and how will we support numbers, and how will we make sure that we have the right number of kids in each classroom, and how many staff do we need. We did need to add a considerable number of staff, but we had a great opportunity. We have been able to offer positions to paras who are in our district who were licensed and were, in their first opportunities or looking for opportunities for teaching positions, and elevate them to long-term subs for teachers who are moving over to the Remote Learning Academy due to medical conditions. We have been working with Endicott, and they have provided us some great resources around fellows and fifth years to help with our staffing in terms of making sure that we have enough adults on hand. But the most important part of this plan for our in-person learning is the cohorting and making sure that the number of contacts for kids and for students were minimized. And so that's been a really important aspect of what we've done. And it's coming together. 7 days ago, I was laying awake every night worrying about it, but I'm feeling really good about it right now. So we will, we said we would adhere to the guidance, and we will adhere to the guidance, and it's working out really well.
A quick question: when you say cohorting, so when you're putting the classes together, and obviously sometimes siblings with twins or triplets, would they be considered to be better cohorted together since they're living together? Or are you taking consideration of neighbors or friends, or are you looking more at the needs of the students, which is like more of a typical classroom configuration?
What I meant by the word was that once they come in the building and they're with that group, they stay with that group all day. And that's a good question. I haven't asked the principals about twins or triplets. I probably will now that you asked it. I would imagine that would make sense. But I hadn't even thought of that specific question. I do know that on the bus, they'll sit together in the same seat. They're allowed to do that. I'm thinking more, when you enter the building, you enter into your classroom of 15 or 16 children and your teacher, and you stay together all day, and there's not intercommingling amongst the groups. That's what's considered safe. That's why we thought this model was a good model for us. And so that's sort of one of the main principles that we're sticking with.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Mr. Milady has his hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is a question that I'm hoping could be answered sometime next week. So I feel, there's a rush for people to get information out, and sometimes there's misinformation that's put out there, whether it's, intentional or unintentional. And I feel as though, as a committee, a majority approve these plans, and I feel that it's our responsibility to stand by those plans. And I think it would be, easier for us to stand by the plans, to put out any misinformation that's out there. So would it be possible for our next meeting on the 26th to have information about what percentage of occupancy, I guess, each of the elementary buildings are at? I think that could, help, the public have a better understanding that, the plan's being carried out, and it would just personally make it easier for me to stand by the plan that the majority approved. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. That's not difficult, especially I was hoping to have some projected enrollment numbers, like, sort of thing ready for you tonight, but we're still finalizing those class lists and things, but I will definitely have more information available for you. So that's great.
I saw Ms. Robinson's hand and then Dr. Flaherty.
Thank you. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about student safety when they might be utilizing the outside areas of the school. So do we have any concerns about student safety when they're out in the open? Like, what if there's an Alice type of situation, and like, will the staff be trained on it? So that's the first part of it. And then also just placement of where our outside learning would be, because I mean, I wasn't on school committee when people were talking about the glass at Beverly Middle School, but I'm guessing you guys probably got a lot of questions about that kind of stuff. And I'm just concerned about, the public knowing, because everybody's talking about outside situations for education right now. And I think that's something that we need to think about, is where we place that outside learning, with everybody knowing in this day and age. It's just concerning.
Oh my God.
Well, first of all, we have another piece I forgot to mention earlier. We have our Wi-Fi. We're having Wi-Fi placed outside in hotspots for around where the outside learnings are. So there'll be designated classroom areas outside. We have a number of, in terms of like your safety protocols, we're going to do everything like we would normally do. There's always going to be your fire drill procedures. There's always going to be your evacuation procedures. There's always going to be all of those things. And so we'll have to be looking at them as routines and procedures as we go forward. However, I think that, there's small groups of students, 15, 16 maximum, probably one, likely two adults with them at all times. So I don't have safety concerns with them outside. It's no different than going out for recess. And I mean, at our elementary schools on a given day, you could have recess running from 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the afternoon. So we like to utilize our outside campuses, but I think that, I understand where you're going, and, you're thinking about the safety and that sort of thing. I don't have that kind of a concern. I really believe that the supervision will be really strong when they're out there, and we'll have good procedures in place as to what to do, should there be a challenge. We're going to be limiting, there'll be no visitors, in the buildings this year. We're going to be limiting the traffic and all of that on our campuses. So those will all be part of what we plan.
Dr. Flaherty, do you still have a question or comment?
I was just going to clarify. We have several principals on the still watching, and they texted to say they actually, and we have talked about the cohorting of twins and triplets. So that is something that's on their plates. And from a public health standpoint, the cohorting would be important, because should one classroom need to go into quarantine, you wouldn't want to have siblings in multiple classrooms. So it's actually a benefit to have them together this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also talking with their crisis teams about what would happen when the classes are outside. So that is also on their radar. And one last thing on the elementary kindergarten delay, it would also allow us to run a run with just them to teach them how to utilize the buses, because it'll be a little bit different than it has been in the past. And we'll be able to do it with just them on the buses.
Thank you for those points. I think I see Ms. Visnick's hand.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe my question is for Dr. Chirocik, and I believe I want to try to ask about a teacher who chose to go to the RLA this year.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any guarantee for those teachers that they are, let's say that I was a 4th grade teacher and I went into RLA and I'm really certified for some number of grades.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have any kind of guarantee that I'm going to get, quote unquote, my 4th grade classroom back next year, the same elementary school that I was at, the same grade that I was at?
So when a teacher's going on medical reason to the RLA, they are going out and we are hiring long-term subs for them. So yes, that there are 1-year positions that we're filling. What they're emptying, the position that they're leaving will be there for them at the following year.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
So I guess then that makes me wonder, what is the criteria to say that it's medically driven versus maybe it's an indirect medical, or maybe it's just.
Oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't clarify that for that reason. So no, I'm saying teachers, we plan to go back to our original staffing pattern for the 21-22 school year.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Dr. Chirocik on this slide? Dr. Chirocik, do you need something from the school committee this evening, or is this just?
No, I think
okay.
I think we're set on that one. I have just a couple more. I have an update on middle school, and I have to move my little screen here. It keeps getting in the way. So middle school, again, there's a lot of repetition. Middle school and high school are continuing their finalization of enrollment. We got the information out about Remote Learning Academy. So the final, I think the deadline was last night. They're still working on putting those numbers together and identifying exactly how many sections and all of that are happening. So I don't have as much specificity around the numbers as I do around elementary, but also the posting applied to them, and we're identifying staffing needs for both the in-person and the remote learning. In addition, because of the transition of rising fifth graders, they have been working on their planning of their grade 5 walking tours of the building. I know that flyer went out, and they're planned, I believe, for the beginning of next week. They also have, and again, if you remember when we built the building, one of the big principles that we had for that was flexible learning, learn anywhere. And again, the outdoor learning spaces are being identified there. The consultant will also be working on them, and the professional development will apply to the middle school as well. I know they have already had the tent person out to take a look at learning spaces and what kinds of tents might be available to be used there. And again, the facility is built with flexible options for outdoor learning spaces, and what would we need, what materials would we need to enhance that. I think we're all excited about the opportunity to take advantage of one of the visions that we had for the building when we built it. And again, also increasing the Wi-Fi for the exterior of the buildings at the middle school, so that making sure that wherever they are, they have that accessibility to the Wi-Fi. In addition, as you can imagine, a lot of work is going into the arrival and dismissal procedures. The hybrid model that we have will have 25% of our students in the building at one time. And so it's really a very good opportunity for them to figure out how and when what they're going to do. Are they using multiple doors? How are they dismissing? And what are the bathroom procedures at the middle school? How are they going to monitor the hallways throughout the time? They're working on procedures and protocols for all of those. As you heard from Christina, how are we going to serve the grab and go lunches? They also have been making individual phone calls to families, confirming and answering any inquiries. I don't know that Mrs. Oliver knew she was going to answer as many emails as she has in the last month when she took the role of middle school principal, but I know she's been doing a lot of emailing with parents. And in addition, the Homeward Bound daily updates have been going out. And so people are very much in tune with the goings on at the middle school through that communication form. They've also been concentrating very heavily on professional development at the middle school. They have a planned implementation of project-based learning for the STEM teachers. That was one of the goals that we had, and we did not want to let the pandemic get in the way of what we identified as something that we needed to continue to work on. So we have project-based learning for our STEM teachers. We, as you remember, purchased a new math platform called the Edmentum, and that's going to supplement the math work at the middle school. And the training for those math teachers is planned for the summer. And as well, we're implementing teacher-led trainings for our social studies, and including the grades 5 through 7 on Discovery Ed, and in 8th grade, the primary source civics programming that we have just procured as well. They're working on their in-person instruction around curriculum roadmaps. They're creating their assessment calendars and class lists and supply lists. And they're working on sort of the classroom setup and the removal of extra furniture where they may need to do that. So before I go on, any middle school questions?
I see lots of hands. Miss Robinson first.
Okay, this is just a small question on maybe the time. So elementary school is being dismissed at, just refresh my memory, the time.
Yeah, middle school is being dismissed at noon. Elementary is being dismissed at noon, but on a staggering basis. So it'll probably start a little before and end a little after. The high school is being dismissed at 12:30. And well, if they were live, if they were in the proposed model that we had, and the middle school is dismissed at 1.
Okay, and the elementary students are to be online again at 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a few emails about perhaps adjusting that time because of needing to help their kids.
Yeah, great question. So first of all, the elementary, and particularly in the beginning, it's asynchronous. And so we need a schedule for the Department of Ed that says that the number of minutes on learning, we will be sending home asynchronous learning that takes, I think it's 45 and 25. So 80, 90 minutes of learning, but it can be done. If it doesn't start at 1 o'clock, it's not synchronous, it's asynchronous. Okay. So that there's not a problem if they're picking up at the middle school and they get on a little later.
Okay, I think you said that before. I think I just forgot, but thank you for clarifying.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, I can't remember who I saw next. I'll go with Miss Biznick. She's got her hand up again.
Cool, thanks. I have two questions, and the first is relative to the 7-8. Is any of the planning that's happening here at the middle school level trying to determine if we can bring the 7-8s onto campus in the outdoor space for something like their advocacy type of blocks, or for any kind of activities, so that they can have something where they get to be out of quote unquote isolation?
Yeah, I think that's concentration 7 through 12. That's conversation and discussion. And I think that it was mentioned at the committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and I know that the administration is aware that that's an area that they work. I don't know exactly what that is right now, but I do know that's part of their planning process.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Abel, may I ask my second question now, or do you want me to take
Go
turns?
Go ahead.
When we consider the agenda item next week, if voting on sports is on the agenda for next week, will middle school sports, I think there's like cross country and track, will they, do you know if they will be included in the in the whole vote? Is it in Mr. Keefe's purview? Is it in our?
It's a great question. I will certainly let you know. I mean, I would assume that would be part of the conversation at least. I don't know whether the guidance was for all youth sports and all interscholastic. And so it would apply to what we would need to do. So I would have to have a deeper conversation, but I'm sure that it'll be part of the conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Milady, did I see your hand before? No. Miss Ferretti? No. Okay. I must have seen my own hand. I did have a question back a slide where you talked about the arrival and dismissal processes being sorted out, and I love the fact that our school has sort of the cattle run common entry point in the front of the building, but that it also has all the neighborhood entry and egresses, and it would be interesting to me to hear more about what the arrival and dismissal plans might be. I'm thinking about when the students had the opportunity to pick up iPads or pick up their own personal belongings at the school. Each of the neighborhood doors was staffed and used as the entry and egress to eliminate the cross populations. So I don't think that there's necessarily a question now. It's just I wanted to indicate, my interest in making sure we explore what are some of the safest ways to use the design of our building to our advantage.
Right. And I believe that's been the conversation that's been ongoing. So.
Okay, great. Any other questions on middle school? Are we ready? I think we're ready for high school.
Okay. So our high school, I'm still in middle school, sorry. There we go. So in terms of the high school, again, some of the information is going to look familiar. They have been also continuing to finalize their enrollment and identifying the staffing needs. In terms of the high school, they're looking at the curriculum roadmaps in particular departments and content areas. They've really been working hard on their procedure manuals for remote learning. So because they're opening in remote, it's been a really good opportunity for them to really dig deeply into what are the norms for students and what are some of those procedures going to look like, as well as planning for freshman orientation. I think they had their first freshman meeting today or tonight, earlier maybe. And I know that that's a really big part of what they're doing. They utilize some student volunteers. They had to train the students in safety measures in terms of their role. And I know that it was something that they were working really hard on. They've been planning on their return for high need students and special populations and identifying programming for some of the in-person high needs programs, which look a little different at the high school than they do at some of the other levels. They've been looking at doing some facility planning, because even though we know that we're beginning in remote, we're all hoping for an eventual shift to hybrid. And so we want to make sure that we utilize this time while we have it to prepare the building for that shift. Again, they're also looking at the decals and unidirectional signage and physical distance visual cues. They're taking a look at their classroom changes to maintain the smaller classroom sizes. They also have been making phone calls to each family, confirming enrollment, determining needs, not transportation needs and perhaps, but looking at making that outreach to families to make sure they have the information that they need. And that brings me to one other conversation and discussion that I want to have. Before I start here, is there any questions on any of those smaller particulars? Okay. And I know that I spoke individually with each of the school committee members, but I wanted to kind of introduce. So when we finished our school committee meeting last, 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of conversation and discussion about some of the concerns that people had around bringing students into the high school. I know that you've all heard a lot from stakeholders in the district around some of their concerns about the model. I don't want to discuss necessarily the model here today, but it drove us to the conversation about the schedule. And so we wanted to think about that model that we had in terms of how would our schedule translate to a hybrid model should we shift to hybrid. And we took into consideration input from a number of stakeholders. So teacher safety, we wanted to think about what was the size of the cohort of students that we were asking teachers to instruct in the course of a day? How could we maintain the 6-foot distancing, which was something that was really important for all of you at the high school level? What about student social emotional health, right? How could we, there was some conversation and discussion about if the students had fewer classes to manage during these adverse conditions, how would that help address executive functioning and provide a deeper learning opportunity for them in the content they were in. We received quite a bit of parent input, as I know that all of you did as well, that we were hoping to get students into school as much as possible. So how could we look at the number of opportunities to get students into the building? And the most common request by all of our stakeholders, continues to be to have students in the building as much as we could. That being said, what we did in terms of that, as we thought about shifting from, I know we're beginning in remote, and as we thought about shifting into a hybrid model, we wanted to take into consideration some of those concerns and try to have some way to address that. And as we thought about it, as the administrative team spent a great deal of time revisiting, I asked them to go back and relook. If you remember, they looked at about 5 different models before the last meeting. And I said, well, let's see if we can look at 5 more. What do we need to do? How can we look at the number of different models to see what we can do to get kids into the building? And what would that look like? And so they revisited the one model that's called the semester schedule. And I know that many of you that have been around before and may have had familiarity with Beverly High School know that it's a schedule that we have had in the past. It was one that we shifted away from for some reasons that were very valid. However, the team did want to go back and take a look at it in light of the current situation that we had and see if it had any merit and how it could maybe possibly help to address some of the concerns that we have. So this is a schedule change that's being proposed. I don't know that it necessarily needs an action. I just wanted to let you know that based upon the original reopening plan that I presented, we have a new idea about the schedule. We would begin a schedule in remote. And the schedule would, if we were to shift, we would be able to maintain the same schedule. So the administration is recommending that we adopt the semester schedule in which students take 4 classes for one semester and then 4 classes for the second semester. They take the year-long course in the time of a semester, but they meet every day. In the remote model, those classes would be the 84-minute block schedule. So they would have their A block, B block, C block, and D block each day of the week. If we were to shift to a hybrid model, we would be able to implement that same schedule, only we would utilize the smaller blocks where they would have 53-minute blocks in live person, and then some on the off days, they would have some synchronous or asynchronous time in that content in the afternoons. And so this is what that it would look like. We would have a typical schedule would have students attending all 4 classes every day of the week. And it's really kind of actually a very simple model. We've taken it out and built it out for, excuse me, I got to plug my thing in. Built it out for a 3-week schedule so you'd have an idea to know of how many times in a hybrid model that student would be in school. Sorry. And so here's what that would look like. So students would be, cohort A would be live on Monday. They would be synchronous or independently asynchronous at home on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They would return to the building on Thursday. So they would have 1-2 times in school during the week that week. They would then on week 2 have another 1-2 times in school. And then on the 3rd week, they would only be live in school on 1 day. So they would have in a 3-week period, 5 days of school, but it would be spread out over a 3-week period. We spent some time because we really wanted to make sure that we were thinking through what the pros and cons of this schedule would mean, both in a remote model and in a hybrid model. In a remote model, the obvious pros are that they're juggling less classes. They're able to concentrate more fully. They're in a new mode of learning in this remote learning. We've all talked very much about how our fall remote learning is going to look different than what it did in the spring. So it is going to feel new and different for all of our students. And if we were to shift to a hybrid model at some time in the future, it would allow us to maintain 6-foot distancing. It would allow students to have the 4 classes per semester. They would be in twice a week for 2 weeks and once for 1 week, and their classes would meet every day, either live or remote, with their classroom teachers. There are some drawbacks. The drawbacks that we know about already is the teaming of freshman academy would need to make some adjustments in the way that it functions right now. Semester-long classes would now be 1 quarter-long classes. That means like phys ed and health, you would have phys ed for a semester typically, but now you'd have it for a quarter. And your special education schedule. And we spent a lot of time with Ms. Blansky to make sure that if we were going to do this, we weren't causing a detriment to special education students. That was one of the biggest issues with the schedule originally when we abandoned it a few years ago. So those are the pros and cons. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
I saw Miss Ferretti's hand first and then Miss Robinson.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. I just had one question. Are there any plans for the AP classes, anything to accommodate them?
Yeah, great question. And we had a long conversation. Actually, we've talked with the union about the schedule and with Julia, and she happens to teach the AP class. So and there are some, challenges for our students that are in the AP class in that they may have AP in the first semester and then the test would be at the end of, closer to the end of the second semester. So we talked about what we would need to do to support those students, what kinds of perhaps refresher coursework we would need to provide or opportunities to make sure that the material was fresh enough for the testing environment. But, one would hope that if someone studied a course for an entire semester, they would know the material, and so that we would be able to kind of get that back. And then and as well as we're not really even sure about the AP exams and what that's going to look like in the spring and how they'll be delivered and when they'll be delivered and, all of that. But we do, we are aware that that would take some adjustments as well.
And can I just have a follow-up question? Are these plans, I know all plans are fluid at this point, but are these plans up for any adjustments, amendments to kind of, our AP students are, looking for the more challenge, and just wondering if as we have more, less restrictions, or we start tweaking the plans, that we're able to amp up the plan for that cohort of
So
students.
the semesters, the schedule would remain in place for the full year. You wouldn't be able to change the schedule, because once you start, which is the same reason why if, we need to adopt the schedule to go into remote in that schedule in anticipation of a shift to hybrid, because once you start in one schedule, you can't change into another schedule. But I did have a conversation with Julia about, let's put our heads together and what can we do around some of the AP offerings and the AP classes to make sure that that we're able to offer them in a way that we need to. And there may be some possibilities that we haven't explored. Maybe there's some virtual opportunities for something or something like that. So again, nothing's off the table at this point in time. We continue to go back every time and try to make sure that we work it to the best of the advantages for everybody to meet the needs of all the kids.
Okay. I saw Ms. Robinson's hand next.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to thank you for, just being so creative and listening to a lot of the teachers who thought that this would be a good idea. And I know that you had said this is just planned for 1 year because of the loss that can take place in learning.
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted.
I will be very, very, very clear with everyone. It would be my intention that the 21-22 school year schedule reverts back to the original 8-block Panther Pride schedule that we have currently from the 1920. It would look like 1920. This is for a 1 year and to respond to the situation that we're in right now. Thanks for asking that.
We're testing out our vote from earlier this evening already, I think.
Right. And so you also said that I just think it's also an easier transition for freshmen to ease into remote learning. I think this is a smart move. I also wanted to know, you said that teams might adjust. I'm just thinking of some freshmen who.
Do you mean the freshman academy when I said freshman academy?
That it might have to adjust. Kids aren't going to change teams.
No, it's the teachers. So the way that the freshman academy is one of the most powerful tools that I think we have in our high school. It's phenomenal, and it's been very well planned out, and it's built on collaboration and really engaging in conversation about students. And so one of the challenges this presents is your freshman team doesn't have all the students at the same time the way they do in freshman academy. So if you think about being able to collaborate around students, instead of all 4 members of the team having those students at the same time, now some members are going to have them first semester and some members are going to have them. So that's a challenge that it presents to the freshman academy. So the adjustments will really need to be, how do we engage in getting to know all the students if they're not physically in our classes? And how do we make sure that we can utilize the data and collaborate and get in buy-in and engagement? But it's a challenge, but as I tell Betty, I know they're up to the challenge. They'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, I just didn't want kids to think their teams.
Yeah, no, not their schedules. So it shouldn't impact student schedules, except for that they will only have their 4 classes in the beginning and their 4 classes at the end.
Exactly. Thanks so much.
Unless I see other hands, I'm going to call myself. I have a question if this new schedule would help us better align with the Remote Learning Academy and the structure that we envisioned for that.
So the Remote Learning Academy is going to follow the same structure, the same schedule, because of the number of inquiries we have about if in fact things improve and we go back into in-person learning, and some families choose to opt into that at that time, and we will be making adjustments. So the Remote Learning Academy would be doing the same thing, following the same schedule.
Okay, and then I just want to clarify, my obtuse comment was that earlier in the meeting we had given the authority to the superintendent to make some of these changes within the policies to align with our reopening plan. I was being very obtuse. Sorry. Ms. Visnick, I saw your hand for a moment. Are you ready to ask a question?
I don't have a question, rather I have a comment, and I'm going to kind of like pile on top of what Ms. Robinson said. And in addition to listening to the staff, I think that it's a semester schedule, I guess. Is that what this is called?
That's what I'm calling it. I don't know.
Okay.
Some people, I don't know what else to call it.
Okay. So I think the semester schedule affords an opportunity for further mitigation. There are further, right, if you're only going to 4 classrooms instead of 8, if you're only mixing with 3 other groups of children compared to 7 other groups of children, right? Because my son who's in Spanish, there's no guarantee that he's in with any of those same students when he goes to class number 2 through 7.
Yeah. So thank you for that, because
8.
I think I neglected to say, you know, at the base of all of it, there's the physical safety and the ability to not be commingling. The cohort sizes are smaller. And I would also be remiss in saying that we showed you the schedule in an ABC with a 1/3 cohort. The same schedule would work with an AB cohort, right? With 2 cohorts. It's a very flexible model that allows us to kind of ebb and flow with what the data and the science is telling us is the right thing to do. And so, but in particular, limiting the number of contacts that students and staff have in a day is one of the primary drivers of the value of this. So.
Right. So I want to, you know, go overboard and say thank you, because we certainly had talked about that at our last meeting. And then I think we also talked about, and the mayor brought up the mental health, and it is, as you and I have talked, there are students who are very solid, really good students. You know, we might even say our straight A students, who, you know, we think have it quote unquote together. And I do believe that a decent number of those students were struggling being remote and handling 8 classes last spring. And so I think that there's also going to be a tremendous benefit to those students from a mental health point of view, to only have to quote unquote learn the landscape of 4 teachers and of 4 different student groups. And so I want to really thank you, because as I said last week, I worked hard to move my position, meaning that 2 weeks ago, I was like really very set on nobody should be in any building. And opening our minds and listening to, you use the word stakeholders, I use the word constituents. So, but listening to that input and then moving ourselves to a different place, I think that, you know, it's great that we can model that behavior, because that's the behavior that we would love for all of our students to be able to also exhibit. And I think it's a huge thing. And so I just really want to thank you, because it takes the saying, I believe, is that it takes a big person to realize that, okay, somebody else brought an idea forward, or, you know, I heard something that tickled something in my brain, and I'm going to go pursue that further. And I know it was a lot of work. So I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who did that work at the high school level, and to you for considering the alternative. Thank you.
And I mean, Mrs. Taylor, Mr. Thomas, Julie Ferrara, Phil Kadir, they worked. They just worked it until they found something that that really, you know, resonated. And so I am fortunate to work with such a great team, and the amount of trust and faith and resilience that they put in to go back and do that is really, and I believe Mark Thomas is probably tired of doing schedules. I think he and Julie and Phil and Betty have done nothing but this for a while. So they're happy to move on to planning now. So it's a good thing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Just looking around, I don't see any more hands, but one more opportunity on the high school. Oh, Ms. Coelho.
Thank you, Madam President. Mine's actually an all-around question. I got a few emails from some freshman parents asking about loaner laptops and when they might be distributed, because they did apply for the one-to-one laptop program, but can't afford the payment.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I know that more information has been sent out, and I wish I had it at my fingertips around the distribution and all of that. I know that they've been working on that. I would encourage and make sure that anyone that has questions or concerns about that reaches out to the tech department. We are working really hard to make sure, particularly we in the remote learning environment. We really need to make sure that everyone has a device that is working and that they're able to get. So I don't have specific information on that, but that's a great question, and I'll follow up with that on the 26th. I'll bring more information forward on that to all of you on the 26th.
While we're on the topic of technology, that just spurred a question in my mind, having signed the warrants and seeing the hotspots now appearing on the district's bill. How are we doing with distribution of those? Did some of them go out over the summer? Or are we waiting closer to the student start dates?
I know that some went out in the late spring in terms of, families that had been identified. I actually believe that some of them are in the possession of the building principals, who are able to much more easily distribute them out to families as they need them. It's been a part of that outreach that I've been talking about in terms of the phone calls. We did a survey. Well, we did a number of surveys over the course of spring into summer, but a couple of them specifically said, do you have reliable internet? And we were able to find and identify some families that way that were struggling, and able to kind of help them in that regard. So I have not been told that we're out and that we need more, but I'm always listening and waiting for that. I can continue to give you more information on that as it comes along. But I know that program in and of itself has been very successful and very helpful to a number of our families. So.
Thank you for that update, especially with so many students starting remotely. I was wondering.
Yep. Can I also make sure I had Steve Palomo's weighing in with me right now, and he said to make sure to let everybody know that anybody that has any questions about any of that, they can go to the bhstech@beverlyschools.org and send an email, and that's where they can get their information.
Great.
But could I just add in this week, as the principals and the school adjustment counselors are reaching out to the elementary families, they've been checking in on hotspots to make sure that everybody's set for the fall.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Any more committee questions?
Well, I am done with my presentation.
Okay. Well, our next agenda item is to enter into what I believe will be a brief executive session. So I will make the motion that we convene an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose number 7 is to review and approve our meeting records from the executive session of July 30th, 2020. And purpose number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with our Teachers Unit A, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee, and we will not return to open session.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. I just need to make my little chart here. I'm sure Ms. Bergeron has it all, but I always like to double check so I don't have to watch this whole video over again. We will do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Karen Robinson?
Yes.
John Milady?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
That's all right. Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. So we have voted 7-0 to enter into executive session, not to return to open session for the purposes outlined under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 7, Purpose 3. The time is 10:49. I want to thank BevCam for all of their support today in broadcasting this meeting and supporting me as we try out this captioning tool. We'll see what the results are tomorrow and how accurate it was. But I thank you all, and members, if you could stay on the line, and public, if you would leave, we're going to lock this room.
Madam President, while you're kicking people out and we're hanging out, can we have like a 2-minute recess between?
I think a bio break would be
yes,
wonderful.
Okay, sure.
Let's have a 3-minute recess, and we will reconvene at 10:54.
Awesome. Thank you.